of the Falcons, first guy that ever gave Rand Carthon a job. Guess what they do?
What's that?
Ha, ha, ha.
Oh, analytics.
Analytics. And so I keep yelling and screaming, and I keep getting mad all the time about all this analytics stuff, analytics this, analytics that, analytics all the time. I'm so tired of that. So I want to know what it actually means. So we will do that. So I'm very, very excited about that. We got tons of great guests coming up all week, which, again, we're excited about. So I want to start with this today, which is over the weekend, I saw a lot of Titans fans that were really jazzed up because Mike Keith and his crew on Titans Radio sat down with the Titans president of football operations, Chad Brinker, at the Senior Bowl. And I wanted to hear what Chad Brinker had to say. And you guys are not going to believe me when I say this, but I actually went into this with an open mind because we've talked to Chad Brinker a couple of times. I think he's a bright dude. I do. And so I kind of wanted to hear, now that there's no secrets as to who the coach is going to be and everything else. I said, okay, let's hear what old Chad Brinker has to say. And then again, Titan fans, when I looked again on Twitter and they were talking about, this interview, it's like, wow, this is a great interview. They went into so much detail. They broke it down so much. I said, this is going to be a must-listen interview for me. So I did. And I got to tell you, I am worried. And I am worried because all I want more than anything else is for the Titans to one day be back here at this game at the Super Bowl. And I heard 50 minutes of blowing smoke. I heard 50 minutes of big buzzwords of talking about running the team, of talking about what their plan is, about talking about how good their flow chart is in their organization. But I felt like there was very little meat on the bone. And this seems to be a recurring theme with everybody associated with this new era Titans group, whether it's the general manager, whether it's, again, the owner doesn't really talk, but when she does, it's to the team, but it's, again, not overly specific. It feels like everybody except for the head coach right now kind of speaks in these big buzzwordy terms that get everybody excited, but it doesn't add up with what we're seeing them do when it comes to operating the program. So there's a couple of cuts here, and we're going to go through a bunch of these cuts today from Chad Brinker, but I'm trying to understand, right? Like, what's the vision here for the team? These are big moments, even if it is a team-friendly podcast where he's never going to get asked any hard questions, where they're never going to hear something that he says and say, ho, wait a minute, what? Because that's what I kept doing when I was listening to this. So let's start with the vision of the football team. That should now be a very easy thing to talk about. The vision of the organization. Here's what Chad Brinker said on the official Titans podcast.
Kind of lay out what the vision is, if you would, please.
Yeah, I think as you look at this league, it continues to evolve. And the Titans and Miss Amy wanted to stay at the forefront of that. And as you look at how these teams are, kind of constructing their front offices now, particularly in baseball and basketball, and you're starting to see it in football now, we had an opportunity to kind of restructure this as we're thinking about our future. So I was fortunate enough to get this opportunity. I'm excited about it. And when you look at the division of labor, so to speak, this is going to allow the head coach to coach, and it's going to allow Rand as the general manager to be the general manager, to pick the players, to work with the coaching staff, and to really focus on what we like to say the main thing. Keep the main thing, right? And Rand is a tremendous person, as far as an evaluator and the relationships he has around the league. And we really wanted to allow him to flourish in that role. So Miss Amy and Burke Nihill, they came to me and said they'd like to create this new structure. Obviously, Rand was in support of this. And essentially everything around that, when it comes to football operations, from the cap management to analytics to the team operations, which includes the security and grounds, football information systems, software, PR, communications, all that stuff. I mean, the NFL is becoming very complex, multifaceted. It's just a big business right now. And it's hard enough to pick these players and build a roster, and you add in all those other pieces. It just makes it really, really tough. So it's good to have kind of attack this as a team.
Did it – what? There's so – that one cut, I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. First of all, is the NFL really new in terms of communication and security and equipment? Is that new to the NFL? The answer is no. Secondly, what's the vision here? Well, you see that a lot of baseball teams and basketball teams and maybe some football teams are doing this. What is it that they're doing? Give me an example of how. Okay, so let's compare it to the 49ers, right? So in San Francisco, Johnny does this, Joey does that, Stevie does that. And so here, Johnny's going to do this, Joey's going to do that, and Stevie's going to do this. And then, again, he keeps talking about, hey, we just want to keep the main thing, which is something I hear all the time from the Titans. If that's the case, then why is he the guy in charge of turf management and equipment and PR and IT and travel? And why is he scouting the players at the Senior Bowl and the picker of the players is not at the Senior Bowl? I don't understand. And is there any pushback on that? Of course not. But again, it's just like, you know, he starts off with, well, hey, the vision Miss Amy has is we want to be at the forefront of the league. What does that mean? Then he talked about the kind of players that he wanted, and I got to tell you, this is some groundbreaking stuff.
I know Ryan and I, we've had a lot of conversations just around philosophically how to build a football team, and we're just so aligned, he and I. And Rand talks about that he has this acronym, FIT, fast, instinctive, and tough football players. And I love that. I was like, man, I love that. That's kind of an identity of the team that you want to build. And because this league, I mean, you got to be big and fast. I mean, size and speed matters.
Wow. You know, he's got this acronym, FIT. And I said, man, I love that. I want tough, fast players too. I mean, again, it's like we're using all these buzzwords, or we're making this sound like, oh my God, can you believe this? This 3 letters, FIT. Who could have thought of that? Who wants fast, instinctive, and tough football players? Ian, do you want fast, instinctive, and tough football players?
Sounds good, yeah.
I mean, I would like them. I never went to Harvard Business School. I've never worked in the NFL before, but those are the kind of players I want too. And they're treating it like it's groundbreaking stuff. It's like, oh, wow, you know, the way we're setting up our organization, because I don't think you guys understand how many things go into running an NFL team. I mean, we've got PR now as if they never had PR before. And again, it's like these buzzwords. It's like they're letting you in to tell you nothing. And I don't think the Titans are playing chess here. I don't think the Titans are so smart that it's like, hey, they got a secret plan, and so they're just going to keep you at arm's length because they don't want anybody into their secret plan. No, I just think that this is what the Titans have done to Amy. I think the Titans have sat down with Amy and they've used words like analytics and AI, and they've talked about, you know, again, how we can build this out and how we can be at the forefront and how that we can be. And she probably hears and is like, yeah, I want to be at the forefront too. That's what it was 50 minutes of that. This was my favorite. So Chad Brinker got his MBA at the Kellogg School of Business, which I'm sure is a very, very fine institution. Again, Chad Brinker's smart. He's not a dummy. So he got his MBA at the Kellogg School of Business or whatever, because he's going to bring in analytics and they're going to use AI, and it's going to be this whole new generation of where the Titans are headed. It's a voyage. It's Christopher Columbus of the Tennessee Titans. And yet... how are they going to find their players? Here's what he said.
There's a methodology that I learned from these guys at Kellogg, who I'm still friends with today, and they're doing big things in the world and changing the world, and I'm just sitting here, you know, trying to build a football team with Rand Carthon. But they're doing some really cool stuff. But, you know, there's a decision methodology that has to do with the foundation of it is experiential intuition. That's traditional scouting. That is the foundation. When you walk into the draft room, and you have a collection of coaches and scouts sitting in there, sometimes over 200 years of experience, you don't throw that out the window.
Think about that. So their entire scouting staff, which is John Robinson's scouting staff, their entire scouting staff, he's saying, hey, I went to Kellogg and these guys are doing great things in the world and I'm just doing football. And so the foundation of play that cut again, because he uses like 6 buzzwords in a row to basically say, yeah, none of that matters. We're just worried about what the scouts say.
There's a methodology that I learned from these guys at Kellogg, who I'm still friends with today, and they're doing big things in the world and changing the world, and I'm just sitting here, trying to build a football team with Rand Carthon. But they're doing some really cool stuff. But, there's a decision methodology that has to do with the foundation of it is experiential intuition. That's traditional
intuition.
Scouting. That is the foundation. When you walk into the draft room, and you have a collection of coaches and scouts sitting in there, sometimes over 200 years of experience, you don't throw that out the window.
So, guys, I went to this incredibly high-end MBA program. I worked and I learned, and we've developed this system, this foundational, intuitional, extravagant system. We're going to listen to the scouts tell us who to draft. It's all bull crap. That's what drives me crazy. I would want nothing more than to feel about the front office of the Titans the same way I feel about the coach, which is that I believe that the coach is a straight shooter. I think the coach knows what he's doing. I think he's got a plan. But when it comes to the Titans front office, it's more snake oil. It's just all these big buzzwords. It's like it's an infomercial. They're trying to pitch me on some crap to buy that doesn't even work. Here's the miracle fitness plan right here. Take this gel and you'll lose 50 pounds today, and then give me a bunch of scientific words and doctors and all. That's what this feels like. And I listened to that for 50 minutes, and I thought, oh my God, they have hoodwinked these Titan fans that think, yes, we are headed out to the forefront of the next generation of how to build a football team, and the Titans are going to be right back at the top. And I think the owner might feel the same way. I think the owner might buy it too. But I don't see any of this. I hear the buzzwords, but I don't go back to last offseason. What did they do last offseason that was so, hey, Kellogg MBA'd? Andre Dillard? Somebody help me out here. So I'm just going to say it to you like this, because there's a lot of people that are going to say, Jared, you need to give them a chance. Jared, you need to believe in the front office. Jared, they've got a vision. Jared, you're just going out of your way to get mad, which is not true, but you believe whatever you want. So there's a lot of people that are going to say stuff like this. But there is one thing that I know when it comes to this organization, and that is that this organization will listen to somebody's spiel. They will buy it. They will invest in it. And then they will fire you when you lose. Just like they bought Jeff Fisher's bull crap. And so I hope the front office, I hope the front office is right and they actually do have something behind door number 2, because we won't have to listen to these buzzwords much longer if they don't actually get football players for the Titans. But man, I felt like I was being swindled listening to that podcast. Just everything's great. They're smarter than everybody. The knowledge base is unbelievable. Ian, how about this? You know what I learned about listening to that podcast?
What's that?
I learned that there are going to be cap casualties from other teams, that the Titans may be able to go pick up those players.
They have cap space.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that teams released players they didn't want anymore, and you could go pick them up. I didn't know that existed. My God. Shocking. It's unbelievable. So, again, you guys can fall in love with it. You can get into the buzzwords. I think the owner's gotten into the buzzwords. I just think it is all a farce. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. I'm sure a lot of people want to get in, 615-737-1025. And then there was another thing in which, again, these are organizations. This is the president of football operations we're talking about here. There was something that he said in which he really contradicted himself, and I don't know what he's trying to tell the fans to expect. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 615-737-1025, live from Radio Row, presented by Nashville Sheriff, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I'm extremely grateful and appreciative. Miss Amy is she is sweet, she's kind, she's fair and tough, and she loves her Tennessee Titans. There's no doubt about it. She loves this organization, she loves these fans, and she wants to get this thing right. And I'm just grateful that she put me in this position to try to help get the organization moving in the right direction and push us into the future.
There you go. That was Chad Brinker on the official Titans podcast, the president of football operations, who was scouting the Senior Bowl this week. And again, 50 minutes, but good job by him, though, to check that box of, hey, let's, kiss the owner's tush a little bit there. And I thought he did a good job. Now, again, my biggest issue is I hear all these buzzwords, I hear all forefront and everything else, and I don't see, help me understand. The coach, I sat down with him, I thought was a pretty straight shooter, which I do like. Now, there was one thing that he said. This was at the very end of this podcast. He had 50 minutes with Mike Keith and the crew. And this he said at the very end. And at first, I'm like, okay, I think I see where this is going. And then I was like, wait a minute. What did he just say? Go ahead.
Turn this thing around. I mean, it's not overnight. I mean, it's going to take some time. And we're going to work really hard. And, you just never know where this can go. But we understand that there needs to be a little patience involved in building a roster. It's going to be, focused, methodical approach where we're trying to get first downs before we get touchdowns. With maybe our quarterback develops into one of the great young stars of our league, you just never know what can happen.
Hey, pause it right here, Ian. Okay, so right there, it sounds kind of like when Barry Trotz came on this show at the beginning of the year and was like, fans, be patient. Be patient with us. Did kind of sound like that, right, Ian?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So, again, we understand what Barry Trotz is saying when he says be patient, which is it's going to take some time to rebuild the Predators. And that means, hey, we might not be very good this year, folks. It'll be okay. Like, we want to win, but we may not be very good, so just be patient with us. Makes sense. Kind of sounds like Brinker saying the same thing there. Go ahead, continue.
Maybe our quarterback develops into one of the great young stars of our league. You just never know what can happen. And at the end of the day, Rand and I talk about this all the time. When you come into an organization, you identify what needs to be fixed. You hire the best before anybody else does, and you develop an obsession with winning immediately. That's what we get paid to do, is to win. So there's no – as we approach this season, we're doing everything we can to assemble a roster to allow us to compete at the highest level.
Okay, so on one hand, it is be patient. This doesn't happen overnight. On the other hand, it is Rand and I talk about it. We're paid to win and win immediately. Well, which one is it? So do we need to be patient? Like, is it going to be? And look, this is the NFL, so nobody's patient. But when it comes to, on one hand, hey, we're going to win. We need to win immediately. That is different than what you normally hear when somebody asks you to be patient. So when they say be patient, do they mean, hey, be patient because on day one of free agency we might not have fixed the team, but by day 3 we probably will? Somebody help me out. And see, again, here's what I think. I think that be patient is shoved in there so that if the team is not good, they can then say, well, we told you guys to be patient, but the Titans, they want to say, hey, our job is we get paid to win immediately, as if, A, we're not smart enough to know that, and B, saying that so that Titan fans have at least a little excitement. It's like, hey, yeah, he says he wants to win. Well, no, he wants to win, but a lot of people get excited about that. And again, this is where you just lose me with just the bull crap. And so I will just say this when it comes to the Titans and the front office. You may love them, you may hate them. I don't know how you feel. I am skeptical. But I think they're kind of on the hot seat. And I think that all this, fluff talk is because they're trying to take the pressure off themselves a little bit. And I think they're on the hot seat because that's how the Titans operate. It's a game of musical blame. And so every year the music stops, and every year it's somebody else. I mean, this time last year, we sat here and Mike Vrabel was a sacred cow who could do no wrong. Now Mike Vrabel doesn't have a job. 2 years ago, they gave a contract extension to John Robinson. And yes, less than a year later, he didn't have a job. So it's musical blame. And so they can buzzword us to death and talk about the forefront and the vision and the methodical intuition and everything else that they say, but they got to win. And I agree with Chad Brinker. They are paid to win and win immediately because this is the NFL. And I would not have fired John Robinson the way they did. I would not have hired, the GM separate from the coach the way that they did. I would not have done a lot of things the way that the Titans did them. But that's their business, not mine. But I'm telling you, I'm not this idea of all of a sudden it's like, hey, now we need to rebuild. Now we need to start over. Now we need to be patient. Now we need to. So last year didn't count? I mean, you guys tell me. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. A lot of phones on this. One texter texted in and said, Floyd is laughing his ass off at these clowns. I don't think Floyd would be laughing because the Titans front office is not a laughing matter when it comes to him. I think I don't want to say what he would think because I don't know. But I don't think he'd be using the big words and forefront and those kind of things. But coming up next, there are two people in this who I look at and I'm like, please save the Titans. They might be the two people that can save the Titans. We'll do that next, and we're to your phone. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Again, we are live at Radio Row here at Super Bowl 58. That's right. I know my Roman numerals now. And be sure to tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight as Vandy's women's basketball team takes on Alabama at home. Pregame at 5:45, tip-off at 6. And coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app. And then tune in to 102.5 The Game tomorrow night as Vandy basketball takes on Kentucky at home. Pregame at 7, tip-off at 7:30. And coverage is also available on the 102.5 The Game app and at thegamenashville.com.
Okay, with your new role as president of football operations, how does that change your draft preparation going into this 2024 draft process, you personally?
There's a lot more on my plate, and I'm excited about it. That's for sure. We have some key leaders in those various roles throughout the organization, which will allow me to assist and support and help Rand and Anthony Robinson in this process. How much is it going to change? I'm a scout at heart. I'm going to continue to scout, continue to help with the evaluation part of this and influence where I can. Maybe, going into next year, what's going to change? I'm not going to the University of Illinois and finding the 7th-round sleeper anymore. It's what's happening is I'm probably going to be able to see really the top talent at the collegiate level and even the NFL level when it comes into free agency. So it might be more of a, hey, Chad, here are 5 guys that we're thinking of. Can you take a look at them and let us know what you're thinking? Versus me going into a school like, I don't know, where I went to school, Ohio University, a MAC school, and writing up 6-7 players who really probably are free agent type guys. So my role will change a little bit in that regard.
There you go. That was Chad Brinker, the president of football operations. So how does this change your role, they ask? Oh, man, I got so much added to my plate now. Like what? I mean, last time I checked, I thought assistant general manager did stuff. Like I thought that was like a big part of the process was assistant general manager. And now if they are taking stuff off of Rand's plate so that he can have more time to focus on picking the players, then I don't think that does mean more on his plate, right? Like if he's running equipment, how is that more on his plate for the draft? That doesn't make any sense. And then when he says, I'm not going to go to Scarbini State and look at those 7th-rounders anymore, is that what the assistant general manager does now? Again, what are we doing here? It doesn't make it – whatever. Now, there is one guy in all of this. When I listened to the Chad Brinker podcast, the official Titans podcast, and I said, okay, this guy has to come through because all these scouts are John Robinson scouts. Rand Carthon has decided he's going to sit at his desk and he's going to let everybody bring the information to him, and then he's going to make the final decision between a left tackle or an inside backer or whatever. And so there's one guy. Well, there's the coach, Brian Callahan, who I do like. I mean, I do like Brian. I trust Brian. I think he's a straight shooter. I think he's a good football man. The other guy is the other assistant general manager, Anthony Robinson. Here's what Chad Brinker said about him and his responsibilities.
But Anthony, he's a scout. That's what he is. He grew up in the Atlanta Falcons organization. He was their director of college scouting. They built a Super Bowl team while he was there. And he's been around with success. He knows what it looks like, and we all kind of speak the same language. But as far as Anthony's role, his role will continue to expand. But his main thing that he's focusing on is personnel, and that's college scouting as well as pro scouting. So he oversees that entire department underneath Rand, and is really kind of driving that part of the business, that part of the organization forward, and setting the tone and being a major part of who we'll be drafting, who we'll be going after in free agency. So Anthony is he's a scout now. He loves getting out here on the road. He's down here at the Senior Bowl with me, and he loves this part. And he loves getting out there and just seeing players, evaluating players, and talking about players, arguing about this player or that player. I mean, we're just football guys. We just hang around and talk ball and love every moment of it. And Anthony's no different. So he has a major role in our organization. And he had this last year as well as moving forward this year, especially moving forward. His fingerprints are going to be on a lot of this too with Rand.
Okay, he's the guy. Save us. Save us, Anthony Robinson. If he's the one who, again, is kind of running that scouting side of everything, because, again, at the Senior Bowl, it was Chad Brinker, Anthony Robinson, and all of John Robinson's scouts. And so if that's the case, then it's Anthony Robinson who's working with the scouts, who's telling them what they're looking for. And what it means is it's Anthony Robinson who is boots on the ground, who compiles all the information and goes back to Rand. And I think Rand's the kind of guy who, if Anthony Robinson says take the outside backer, he's going to listen to Anthony Robinson and take the outside backer because of collaboration and everything else. So that's the guy who can save the Titans. Anthony Robinson, Please save the Titans. If not, I mean, I don't see how this – I see no way this improves. Let's go to your phones, which are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam in Portland has been waiting patiently and is going to kick us off today live from the Super Bowl. Adam, go ahead.
Man, that's cool that you're down there, Jared, man. Hey, so all right, so I worked in corporate America for a long time, and every once in a while we would have some big suit fly in, and he would bring with him some type of a motivational speaker, whether it was like an Olympian or a famous chef, and it would try to relate to our jobs. And we would have to stand there. We'd have to dress nice just to hear him speak, and then we would stand there. And when he was done, we would clap. We'd go back to our desk. That's the same guy, man. This is just a job where a guy who's like really, above getting paid more than everybody, but doesn't really have a clue what he's doing, comes in and he's like, oh yeah, we want fast and instinctive. Of course, that's all you're going to say. Like, you don't have a clue what the real issues are. You're the guy who we roll out to try to sell tickets or whatever it is you're doing, try to push a vision, but it's the same vision every other 31 teams have. So I don't listen to a word that guy says. If he probably watched Moneyball and got motivated right before he made the speech. That's what it sounded like to me. And so that's what I took away from it, dude.
Okay, so I appreciate your call. So here's the problem, though, is that this is the president of football operations. Now, again, I still don't understand how Rand is the guy picking the players when he is the executive vice president and Chad is a president, because in no organization is vice president ahead of president except for apparently this one. But again, like, he's not some guy who's flying in to motivate everybody. He is the guy who's the point person that's at the Senior Bowl, which is where you scout the players. Like, that's where you get to talk to the players. That's where you get to all this stuff with the players. So it's not like he's some consultant that they flew in to give him a rah-rah speech. And that's part of the problem, is I feel like it's too much rah-rah speeching and not enough of, like, actual football. Tell me, what's the vision in terms of who's done it this way, and how do you see you doing it the way that they're doing it? And somebody texted in, and I lost the text of what it said, but the gist of it was, I agree with you, Jared. It sounds kind of like they're blowing smoke, but how would you have answered those questions if you're going to answer them any better? And all I would say to that is, look at the coach. Look at the coach. I mean, we sat down with Brian Callahan, and I think Brian Callahan is a freaking straight shooter. I think he's look, I have no idea if he's a good coach, but he sounds like he articulates his plan very well without just throwing a bunch of big words in there. But I go back to when we sat down with him, and he talked about, again, the Chase versus Sewell draft choice. And he explained in that particular case why he felt the way he felt. Even when I asked him about Skoronski and about how you had said a podcast, you thought he might be a guard, and he was very quick to say, hold on, wait a minute. I mean, I think the traits, yes, but I'm not going to put us in a corner because we might play him at tackle. Like, it was direct. It wasn't just a bunch of big words and, when I was in Cincinnati, blah, 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 blah. Which is what a lot of this was. It was just, big words. Woo, look how smart we are. Texture says, Brinker sounds like a typical B-school know-it-all who talks a big game and then personally produces very little while taking credit for the hard work of his direct reports. Bottom line, in year one, Rand Carthon demonstrated he was not capable of fulfilling all the GM duties, so they peeled a bunch of it away from him. Now Rand is only responsible for player and pro personnel. He's basically fulfilling the same duties he had with other clubs at a director level, but now has the title of GM. I don't think that's the case. We can parse the titles and this and that and everything else, but Rand's picking the players. Rand did not pick the players in San Francisco. So you can't say that he has the same job title. I mean, at the end of the day, somebody has to be there when that phone rings. And it's, I don't know, the Denver Broncos, for instance. Let's use them as an example. And it's the Denver Broncos with a draft trade. And the first call that they make to you, they're going to try to rip you off. And so you're sitting in there, and the Denver Broncos have called, and they're trying to rip you off, and you got to have somebody that says, no, we're not making that trade. Now, at the first one, everybody's going to say, no, we're not making that trade. But when you go back to kind of renegotiate it, the question is, okay, what are you willing to take or not take? Somebody has to make that decision, and that person supposedly is Rand Carthon. So it is very different. Now, about Chad Brinker and the business school and all of that, I'll just say it like this. I got thoughts. Texter says, Adam is wrong. What was wrong with the Titans was a 50-year-old style, too much conservative play, poor draft picks, and Rand knows this. Amy knows this. First of all, Jared knows this. Like, I know that the way the Titans were doing business, where John Robinson would lock himself in his office, from what I was told, lock himself in his office and watch tape all day and not listen to the scouts, which is what the Titans are pumping out there right now, that's not a way to do business. A way to do business is to hire good people, which the Titans have not done. The scouts are all the same. And I'm not saying that their scouts are bad. I have no idea. But if you're mad about the Robinson draft choices, you can't roll with the Robinson scouts. But the whole thing is to hire good people and then to manage those people, but also have enough of it yourself so that you can make those decisions and feel comfortable with risking your job on those decisions. What it feels like to me is that the Titans just have people in roles and they say, go do the role and then come back to me. And then it's like, well, we picked Jimmy because this guy said we should. And that's different. But Jared knows that the Titans have had poor draft choices. Texter says what's different now is this team has made the decision to move into a modern, explosive, offensive-based team with an offensive guru. They are leaving the Bud Adams style of football behind. They will find players and coaches that fit this change, and the sky is the limit, Texter says. Remember when they hired Ken Wisenhunt? And I'm not saying this guy's Ken Wisenhunt, because I don't think he is. Again, I think this guy is a straight shooter. I thought Wisenhunt was an a-hole. But it's not like this is the first offensive coach the Titans have ever hired. Sometimes I think people just don't like running the ball. And Callahan's going to run the ball now. But a lot of times people they don't like running the ball, so they say, oh, yeah, now we got this modern, explosive, a high-tempo offense with. Okay, so what are we drafting in the first round this year? We're drafting a guard? Somebody help me out here. 615-737-1025. More of your phones. 615-737-1025 here on the Titans if you want to weigh in. We will get it. We'll take a little Titans breather for a second because I do have a basketball thought. Ian, did you watch a game Saturday night?
I did actually, yeah.
I watched a basketball game too. And I got a basketball thought on Tennessee's big win over Kentucky on Saturday. We'll do that next, and we'll get right back to your phones. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Cal, you knew Tennessee was going to come out and play physically. What did you think of the way your guys responded to that physicality, especially early on?
Well, early on they were making every shot and doing it, which is fine. But we're down 4 at half. We make a 3, it's a 1-point game. We have our chances. And again, I'll have to go watch the tape. There were, again, some stuff that went on, some shots that we missed. You gotta have a bunch of guys playing at their best when you're playing against a team like that, top 5 team, and they're playing well. You got guys making shots that haven't made shots, making threes, and so you're gonna have to play. And I like the fact that we were there. We're down 7 and we had missed 4 free throws. And I mean, it's the end of the game. Let's go. And so some of that stuff hurt us. I don't want these guys to lose any faith. Your confidence does get shaken when you're young. I thought Justin did a good job today. It's great to have him back in there where he can go. He did some really good stuff.
There you go. That was Cal after what happened on Saturday. So let me first get this out of the way. Good game, Tennessee. They did not play their best earlier in the week, losing to South Carolina. They went on the road to Rupp Arena, and I mean, they socked Kentucky from the opening tip. I never felt, even when Kentucky went on their runs and got back in the game, I never felt like Kentucky was going to win. And even though the score wasn't as lopsided as I thought it was going to be, Kentucky should be embarrassed for how badly Tennessee went in there and beat the crap out of them. And that includes that little, brouhaha there on the floor between Bradshaw and Awaka. And I'm not going to lie to you, when the 2 guys from Kentucky were going at Awaka, I thought he was going to fight both of them, and I think he could have taken both of them himself, Jack Reacher style. But that's not really my takeaway from the game. Tennessee basketball is good. Tennessee basketball is good every year. And then March comes. And so we'll worry about them and their coach when they get to March. The story for me is Calipari, because Kentucky basketball has not won anything in a decade. Like, they have not been to the Final Four since 2015. The last time Kentucky was in the Final Four, I didn't even work at this radio station. This is Kentucky. This isn't Johnny Joe State. And then Kentucky felt like they were getting away from themselves with the transfer portal and everything else. So Cal goes back to his roots and he gets the best recruiting class ever. And they come in this year and they get their asses spanked at home by Tennessee. I've been to Rupp Arena before. I went there for a Saturday game against North Carolina about 10 years ago. It was a Roy Williams, John Calipari. There were great players on both teams. And I said to myself in that building, I said, I do not know how anybody wins in this building, because it is so intimidating at Rupp Arena. And Tennessee just walked right in there and smacked them in the face and walked right out after dropping 100 points on them. And I just think it's time to admit reality when it comes to Calipari, which is he is a Hall of Famer who is now at the end of his career, and quite frankly, he's washed up. He is Albert Pujols with the Angels. I mean, that Cardinals Albert Pujols was Babe Ruth. Albert Pujols signs a gazillion-dollar contract with the Angels. He got old. He just couldn't play anymore. He just wasn't Albert Pujols anymore. And that's what Calipari is. John Calipari is no longer John Calipari. Like, the idea of him going out and getting all of the best players and beating you with an NBA team and embarrassing you and being number 3 in the country and going right to the Final Four, those days are over. Those days are over. That's it. I mean, think about it this way, right? Kentucky basketball went to the Final Four. They got to the Elite. Calipari got there in 2009, so the 2010 tournament was his first tournament. Number 1 seed, Elite 8. Final 4, National Championship. Now, they went to the NIT that one year. Final 4, nothing. Cal's lost his fastball. I mean, Rick Pitino, for instance, he's coaching at St. John's now. He's coaching at Iona, and he was still coaching all those teams up. You know, they were still playing fast and playing aggressive and playing the way that they've always played. He's the same guy. He's just not at a blue blood cheating his tush off in order to get good players. But he's the same guy, got the same heater. Roy Williams ends in the Final Four. Coach K ends in the Final Four. Jay Wright ends in the Final Four. Those guys left with their fastball. They may not have liked where the game was going with NIL and everything else, but they were still pumping 95. Cal doesn't have it anymore. Cal's like Jim Boeheim. He used to be good, but his brand, it's not the same. Now, again, I don't want this to be, I don't want you to think that I'm trying to take away from the Vols, because I did think that that was a good win. But again, with the Vols, the question is not, can the Vols be a really, really good team? Can the Vols be a top 5 team in the regular season? We know they can be. The question is, what about March? And all those people keep tweeting me saying, oh, no, Dalton Connect, he's the difference maker. Now, he is Larry Bird out there on the floor for them, but at the same time, Rick Barnes had Kevin Durant. So I'm not going to look and say, well, you know, now they got Dalton Connect, so they're going to be able to overcome the Rick Barnes bugaboo because they've got Dalton Connect. He's had Kevin Durant before, didn't help him there. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Back to football. So Jim Wyatt, I actually seen Jim rolling around here at the Super Bowl, but Jim Wyatt had an eye-opening quote about the future of Derrick Henry, and it makes me think Brian Callahan wants him back. I'll explain. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, which this week is Radio Row at Super Bowl 58. That's right, I know my Roman numerals now. Broadcasting live from Radio Row in Vegas is presented by the Nashville Sheriff. The Nashville Sheriff is hiring correctional officers. Call 615-862-8170 or email kirk.hopkins@nashvillesheriff.gov. So I've actually seen Jim Wyatt rolling around here some at Radio Row at the Super Bowl, but he was in Orlando this past week for the Pro Bowl games. Did you watch Pro Bowl games this weekend, Ian?
Not a second.
I did not either. So he was in Orlando, though, for the Pro Bowl games, where while the actual event is worthless, the media stuff is not, because the best players that aren't in the Super Bowl are there. And in this case, Peyton Manning was there. And Jim Wyatt talked to Peyton Manning about Brian Callahan and Derrick Henry and where the Titans go from here and everything else. And it should be noted that when Brian Callahan was first hired into the NFL by Gary Kubiak with the Denver Broncos, his job was basically to be Peyton Manning's right-hand man. He worked for the team, but really, he worked for Peyton. He and Peyton are very close. Peyton was pushing the Colts last year to hire Brian Callahan as their head coach. So obviously, Peyton has a very vested interest in Brian Callahan. Now, that's good, because I don't think Peyton Manning associates with losers, but that is just something to keep in the back of our minds for this exercise. Because, again, I don't know what's going to happen with Derrick Henry. I don't know what the market is going to say for Derrick Henry. I don't know what Derrick Henry wants to do, other than he went on the bus and with the boys and said he wants to win a ring, but also the business side, and there's all these running backs that are out there, so who knows? But I did sit down with Brian Callahan. I asked him about Derrick Henry. He said, hey, you don't just move on from Derrick Henry. So, he left the door open. But how about what Peyton Manning told Jim Wyatt? This is from TennesseeTitans.com. Manning has already talked to Henry about a number of things, including Brian Callahan, who is now head coach of the Titans. Manning knows Callahan well. They were together in Denver with the Broncos. Quote, Brian Callahan would love Derrick Henry and vice versa, Manning said on Friday. There's obviously the business side that comes into play, and that's up for Rand Carthon and his staff to decide, but Brian Callahan appreciates a good run game. His dad is coming over to coach the offensive line, and his dad is the best line coach in the NFL. And I know he appreciates a good back. Tennessee would be a great place for Derrick to continue to play, in my opinion, said Peyton Manning. Guys, Peyton Manning knows how to talk to the media. This ain't his first rodeo. So if Peyton Manning didn't want to push his chips in the middle about how the Titans need to keep Derrick Henry, then Peyton Manning would not have pushed his chips into the middle, saying that the Titans need to keep Derrick Henry. Peyton Manning would not say that if he didn't think it needed to happen, or if he hasn't already talked to Brian Callahan about it. And my guess is that he has. I think this is a sign that Brian Callahan wants to keep Derrick Henry. Again, think about where Peyton's loyalties lie. Number one in this equation, his loyalties lie with Brian Callahan. So if, for instance, he didn't think that Brian Callahan needed to have Derrick Henry around, or he thought that by keeping Derrick Henry around that would hinder Brian Callahan's ability to have success, he would not have said, they need to get Derrick Henry back. Derrick Henry will love him. He will love Derrick Henry because that's his boy. He doesn't want to set him up for failure. And again, these guys were attached at the hip when they were in Denver. Peyton's still talking about him today. I mean, as soon as the Titans hired Brian Callahan, it was like, here's what Peyton Manning had to say. It reminds me of when the Vols hired Jeremy Pruitt, and immediately Tennessee had a release with, here's what Nick Saban had to say, as if it's like, Yes, Saban believes in him, so if Saban believes in him, we're on our way. If Peyton believes in Brian Callahan, we're on our way. But again, Peyton's only doing this because that's his boy. So if Jim Wyatt had come up to him and had said, hey, what do you think about Derrick Henry and Brian Callahan and Derrick Henry returning to the Titans or where he would fit? And if Peyton didn't think that Derrick Henry would fit, Peyton would have a very well, on his feet, crafted, politically correct statement. Because again, this is not Peyton Manning's first rodeo. He's been doing this for 30 years. So asking him about Brian Callahan and Derrick Henry, if he doesn't want to say anything, if he doesn't want to put his flag anywhere, that's not difficult for Peyton Manning to do. But in this instance, Peyton really did go in. Oh, my God, they love each other. And I'll tell you, I hear his dad's coming in there. His dad's a great line coach. His dad loves a good back. His dad, trust me, he knows. And my guess is, and again, I don't have any sourcing on this. I don't have any inside info on this. I don't have any. My guess is Callahan and Peyton talked about this before Peyton coached Derrick Henry at the Pro Bowl. My guess is that Callahan using Peyton as an intermediary just to make sure Derrick understands, hey, man, this is not a rebuild. This guy is not trying to totally look to reinvent the wheel on offense. This guy is. Now, the why Brian Callahan would want Derrick Henry back, that's a different discussion. And I can't totally answer that for you. But my guess is that Callahan probably talked to Peyton about this ahead of time. Because that was not a lukewarm, run-of-the-mill, I'd love to see Derrick stay in Tennessee, but the NFL's the NFL, and the Titans are trying to move forward and turn the page, and so whatever direction they go in will be, it wasn't one of those, which is what we're kind of used to, right? And so it wouldn't surprise me. And again, the whole Peyton selling Derrick Henry on Brian Callahan is not a, Derrick, sit down and let me tell you that Brian Callahan wants you and the Titans love you and you shouldn't leave. No, it's a, hey, man, trust me. I know your game. I know his game. And I'm going to tell you right now, he'd love to have you. You're his kind of back. So, again, I know that Cincinnati had Mixon and Pirine, and then I forget who the second back they've had is after they lost Pirine. But Cincinnati did not have Derrick Henry toting the football. But I do think Brian Callahan wants him. Because for Peyton Manning to endorse it, again, that wasn't lukewarm. And who is Peyton most? Again, there's three people here, right? There's Callahan, there's the Titans, there's Henry. Who is Peyton Manning most loyal to in this case? Callahan. So it makes me think that, again, and I don't have any inside info on this, it makes me think that Derrick Henry returning to the Titans, at least from where the Titans sit, I think it is absolutely a possibility, and I think Brian Callahan wants it. And I was not expecting that. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on that, 615-737-1025. And then the question would be why? Why would the Titans want Derrick Henry back? If Brian Callahan is, in fact, going to Peyton Manning and saying, hey, tell Derrick, make sure Derrick knows that he would fit into this offense, that we'd love him. Why? I've got an idea on that, and we'll get to that next. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Again, we are live at Super Bowl 58, Radio Row. And Christopher Mad Dog Russo going to join us at 5 o'clock today right here at Radio Row. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. And a happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday will be all about scoring the best seats on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. And I, by the way, am going to, I think I'm going to be purchasing some Super Bowl gear for some special people, but we'll get to that in a different discussion. But FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet who will win the Super Bowl, but you can also check out FanDuel for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/JGM, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. What do you make of the leadership element there? Because it is a young team, especially on offense, if he's not there.
Yeah, and that's an important part. And, you know, I think back sometimes to I wasn't in Cincinnati when it happened, but they released Andrew Whitworth, and probably rightfully so, in the sense that, you know, he was 35 years old.
Sure.
And it was, they probably felt like it was time. And I wasn't a part of the decision, but when we got there, all anybody ever said was when they released Whitworth, there was a gigantic void in the leadership in the locker room. And we felt that when we got there in 2019, as Whit's going on to the Rams and playing in Super Bowls. And so that part of it was always made me think about there is a place for veteran players that have really, really deep leadership roles in the locker room. And I don't underestimate that effect on the unit. So those are things that you consider when you're talking about bringing back older players.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan on our show talking about, hey, look, I do not discount the locker room element of bringing back Derrick Henry. And that was who I had asked about specifically there. So, again, Jim Wyatt goes to the Pro Bowl for the team's website, And Peyton Manning up and down. Derrick Henry would love Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan would love Derrick Henry. Brian Callahan's dad would love Derrick Henry with that offensive line. I mean, it was almost like Peyton was taking their hands, taking Derrick's hand and taking Callahan's hand and kind of putting them together and saying, all right, you two hold hands, you'll love each other. He's setting them up. And again, I don't think Peyton, Callahan's his boy, I don't think Peyton's doing that if he hasn't already talked to Callahan about it. So why would Callahan want Derrick Henry back? A lot of times when it comes to having an older star, face of the franchise, established player, the new coach wants to come in and really get rid of that guy, right? Bill Parcells got to Dallas and Emmitt Smith had to go. That's usually what they want to do. Some of it is MGS, my guy syndrome. Some of it is we have to think about the future and not worry about the past. But apparently that's not the issue here. So in the case of why Derrick Henry would return to the Titans, to me it's twofold. One, I do think by being the franchise's all-time leading rusher, if Derrick has another 2 years of production, he may be able statistically to get to a point to where being with the Titans for his entire career and having all these different Titan Oiler records would be beneficial to him getting into the Hall of Fame. I do think there's something to that. And I don't think the idea of going somewhere and winning a ring and that, Corey Dillon did that, and it hasn't helped him get into the Hall of Fame. So that's the first reason. The second reason is the money, right? What's the market going to be for Derrick? I don't know. There are a ton of running backs that are on the market. And right now in the Super Bowl, one of these teams drafted their running back in the 7th round. So we know why Derrick, if Derrick were to come back to the Titans, we know why Derrick would come back to the Titans. But why would Callahan want him back? And I think it's as simple as this. Who's good on this offense? Who's good? Levis is not good. The left tackle is not good. Skoronski was good in the last game, but is not good right now. Brewer is not good. The right side of the line is not good. Radens is certainly not good. Although Radens actually, if he could stay on side, might actually have a spot in the NFL. Chig is not good. Wiley is not good. Hopkins is good. Burks is not good. And I'll say Spears is good. How many players do we just say were good?
2.
2 players. 2 good players on offense. Hopkins and Spears. Derrick Henry is good. And we all know that. And he may not be the same Derrick Henry running for 2,000 yards. And there were a couple of runs this year where I'm thinking old Derrick takes that to the house. And unfortunately, older Derrick didn't. But again, how many guys on this team are good? And that's what I always keep pointing at. I mean, I think Brian Callahan's looking at this saying, hey, we've only got X amount of guys on our team that are any good. So why would I just kick away somebody who is good, who is a locker room guy, who probably fits in with the organization, who is a good leader, why would I kick that guy away? I mean, the easiest way to get good, and I know everybody wants the Titans to throw the ball 50 times a game and light it up for 385 yards and 4 touchdowns. And so what I'm about to say, you're not going to want to hear. But the easiest way to get good in the NFL is to run the ball and play defense. That is the easiest way to get good. You're probably not going to get great doing that. You're probably not going to win the Super Bowl right away doing that. But that is probably what's best for being able to be competitive and then let your young quarterback grow. So that's why I think he wants him back, is because, A, they need a leader in the locker room, and Henry is certainly that. Hopkins is not a locker room guy. He is not. I don't think he's a bad locker room guy, but I don't think he's a good locker room guy either. If he was a good locker room guy, then all these teams wouldn't be getting rid of him, especially the rebuilding Cardinals. If he was a great locker room guy, that's the last guy they would have gotten rid of. Instead, they were like, please, just get rid, just go. So they don't have a locker room guy on offense. They're going to need it. They're going to need it. And then they just don't have a lot of good players. I think that's the other part of it. 615-737-1025. Your phones are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Again, we are live from the Super Bowl at 615-737-1025. Caleb says, do you think that Derrick Henry will have a bunch of options on where he wants to go? I know a lot of talk about Henry is how he gets better with the more carries he gets in a game, but this is a passingly now. I can only think of a few teams that Derrick Henry fits well in. And if he goes somewhere other than the Titans, do you think his number of carries significantly drops next season? So I think there will be tons of teams that would like Derrick Henry at their price. Like, I don't think there's a lot of teams that would say, hey, for $2 million, we're not interested in Derrick Henry. If I were the Ravens, I'd give Derrick Henry $3-4 million. I mean, I would want Derrick Henry if I were the Ravens. Now, look, they probably look at their analyticguru.com, whatever, and they probably think, oh, we get the same thing out of Gus Edwards. We'll just give him the ball. But you and I both know Gus Edwards is not Derrick Henry. You know that. I know that. We all know that. So when it comes to putting this together and saying, like, hey, how many teams would want him? Teams that want him, they just don't want to pay for him. Now, how many teams are out there that would be chasing after him? It's a different story. And I don't know the answer to that. And I look at a team like Dallas, where the owner is an impulsive old coot, and I could see him saying, I want him. I just think that the best thing for Dak would be to turn around and hand him the ball. And we'll get another running back in here that we can throw the ball to, but I want that big running back, and I want to give him the ball. I don't think he'll do that, but he could. And so it's hard for me to tell. I do not think Derrick Henry will have a ton of options with a lot of money. Like, I don't think there will be a lot of options there. One texter says 1 year, $4.3 million is the market value for Derrick Henry. Sounds about right. Whatever Derrick Henry signs with, especially if it's the Titans, his contract will be reported as up to. So whatever it is he ends up signing, it'll be a 1 year deal, maybe a 2 if some team throws in, some dummy year to make it look better. But it'll be a 1 year deal up to X amount of $1 million. And I don't know what that million, I don't know what the total million, I have no idea. But it will be up to. It will not be a 1 year, $9 million contract. No way. Cameron says it might be the easiest way to get good quickly, running the football and playing defense, but it's fool's gold. If it takes you to 9-8 and you get mediocre draft picks, you end up stuck at 9-8. You also can't win the Super Bowl. The last time the number one rushing team won the Super Bowl was the '85 Bears. I'm just saying that the Titans are probably not going to want to win 6 games next year, and the best way to do that and to alleviate pressure for the young quarterback who they are trying to develop, who they are trying to turn into a good quarterback, the way to do that is to run the football. I'm not saying you have to run it with Derrick, but you do need to run the football. I mean, running the football is incredibly important. San Francisco runs the football. Like that, they run it. Kansas City, I forget who I saw over the weekend who said Andy Reid doesn't even like to run the football. And they've been running the football. They run the ball. I mean, they run the hell out of the ball with Pacheco. So running does matter. Now, again, if you're going to compete for the Super Bowl, my guess is Will Levis has to pop. He has to become a star, which he is not. But don't sit there and tell me like, oh, yeah, no, they're running the ball. We don't want to do that. You're going to want to do that next year. You don't want your identity 3 years from now to be that. You want Will Levis to be the star of the team and for him to be a top-of-the-league quarterback. And, again, I don't think that's going to happen, but it would be – well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know if that's going to happen. I really don't. I hope it does. But I'm not, I'm not going to sit there. Somebody texted into the text line and said, did you say Levis is not good? Did you see that offensive line this year? Dude, I don't care who we bring. We'll start bringing people on here at Radio Row. They will not sit there and tell you that Will Levis, at this point in his career, is a good NFL quarterback. And you know that. I mean, I know you guys want to think that every Titan player is the greatest player who ever lived, but I don't think we're there when it comes to – I don't think we're there when it comes to Will Levis. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Now, we got some analytics gurus coming on the show, and let me say this when they come on the show. I promise to have an open mind about what they're going to say. I do. Because the thing about analytics is not so much that, oh, Jared hates analytics. It's that I don't really know. Like, what's the difference between analytics and we're going for it because I'm Dan Campbell? And I don't know the answer to that. But coming up next, there was one thing that got a lot of Titan fans excited about the future frontier of what the Titans may be doing. And it does not ring for me. I'll explain. We'll get to it next. 615-737-1025. Again, is our phone number if you want to weigh in live here from Radio Row at the Super Bowl, presented by the Nashville Sheriff here on our program. Tune in to Chase and Big Joe tomorrow between 9 and 11 a.m. Central Time for details on how you can win a pair of tickets to see Def Leppard and Journey with the Steve Miller Band at Nissan Stadium. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Okay, with your new role as president of football operations, how does that change your draft preparation going into this 2024 draft process, you personally?
There's a lot more on my plate, and I'm excited about it. That's for sure. We have some key leaders in those various roles throughout the organization, which will allow me to assist and support and help Rand and Anthony Robinson in this process. How much is it going to change? I'm a scout at heart. I'm going to continue to scout, continue to help with the evaluation part of this and influence where I can. Maybe, going into next year, what's going to change? I'm not going to the University of Illinois and finding the seventh round sleeper anymore. That's what's happening is I'm probably going to be able to see, really the top talent at the collegiate level and even the NFL level when it comes into free agency. So it might be more of a, hey, Chad, here are 5 guys that we're thinking of. Can you take a look at them and let us know what you're thinking? Versus me going into a school like, I don't know, where I went to school, Ohio University, a MAC school, and writing up 6-7 players who really probably are free agent type guys. So my role will change a little bit in that regard.
There you go. That was Chad Brinker on the official Titans podcast talking about his new role. I got so much more on my plate now that I'm not assistant general manager. Assistant general manager was going out to Ohio University and breaking down the 7th round guys. Is that, I'm serious. Is that what the assistant general manager? I have no idea. Now, Chad Brinker's talking a big game with the Titans, and he's not the only one. But the thing we keep hearing about is the new focus, analytics, AI analytics. Now, we're going to have some of these analytic gurus on today, and as I said, I will have an open mind with this. But I was listening to Chad Brinker on that official Titans podcast, and there was one thing that he brought up when talking about his experience getting his MBA at the Kellogg School about using AI and analytics into the football marketplace that I think just made a bunch of Titan fans lose their panties. I mean, just got them so excited. Here's what he said.
So I got around a lot of really, really smart people, and one of the classmates I had a PhD in neuroscience from the University of Minnesota. He had an advanced analytics degree from Oxford, and he helped design the AI technology for one of the top medical device companies in the country, where the AI was used to help the doctors identify cancer in patients. And I was just fascinated by this. And so I took what was a football problem and we put it in the context of AI. And one of the problems that we have in football is we spend a lot of money on players that don't pan out for injury. A lot of times they get injured and you end up paying for them injury settlements, or you end up cutting them once they get healthy. I was like, if we can reduce our pool there, if we can reduce our risk within that pool of players, I mean, that would be a game changer. If you can save an owner $1 million, $2 million off of one decision, I mean, that's a game changer. So I got with these guys, and we started to attack the problem. And to make a long story short, we were able to develop some models that seemed promising.
Okay. Sounds great, right? I went to the Genius School, and I met another genius who was at the Genius School with me, and he's a super genius. And what he's done is he's curing cancer. I mean, that is basically what he said, right? Like, they're using AI to detect cancer to help. And I said, how can we take this incredible breakthrough in AI cancer analytic research and put it to football? And so we broke down some models here, in which allowed us to be more efficient, because if we can save $1 million or $2 million with these models, that is going to streamline our football team and put us exactly where we want to be. Ian, was that a good paraphrase right there?
I think so.
Okay. Why'd you give Aaron Brewer $4.3 million? I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like, okay, that's great. That's great that you went to Genius School. So where in those analytic models said give Aaron Brewer a second-round tender, which was $4.3 million, when the right of first refusal tender, which meant that somebody else would have to offer Aaron Brewer a contract, and even then you could match it, would have been $2.6 million. I mean, we're talking about the difference of $1.7 million. How much money did Chad Brinker's curing cancer model that he took at the Genius School from the Super Genius, how much money, Ian, was he looking to save the owner?
$1 million.
$1 million to $2 million. I just saved you right there $1.7 million. And this is where I think this is all bull crap. And this is why these guys, Brinker and Carthon, they don't do press conferences. Unless they have to do a press conference, they won't do it. And this is exactly why. Because if he got up there in front of me and he said, oh, yeah, I went to the Genius School, and at the Genius School, we talked about how to cure cancer, and they're using AI and analytics, and the whole point of talking about AI and analytics and everything else is that it is so above our heads that when we hear somebody talking about it like they understand it, like they know how to use it, then we must think that that guy is smart and that he knows more than us and he can't explain it to us because we're too stupid to understand AI and analytics, which might actually be true. Like, I might be too stupid to understand exactly how to use AI or how to incorporate AI into anything more than typing things into ChatGPT. But you can't do that and then give Aaron Brewer $1.7 million extra when Aaron Brewer's not even good anyways. Where were the analytic models then? Tell me, what did AI tell the Titans about Andre Dillard? That was a waste of $10 million. And the only defense that we've ever heard about Andre Dillard was, well, he was a first-round pick. I mean, you know, hey, he was a first-round pick. Is that what the AI model said, hey, this guy might be good because he was a first-round pick 4 years ago? I mean, Isaiah Wilson was a first-round pick. Wasn't the AI model say go get him? You'd be saving money if you got Isaiah Wilson as opposed to Andre Dillard for $10 million. And that's the stuff where I'm like, no. You do not get to pump that and then do the exact opposite to what would be efficient and giving Aaron Brewer all that money. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And so that's why I keep saying that it feels to me like when it comes to the Titans talking about where this thing is headed and the forefront of where they're going and everything else, it all sounds like snake oil to me. It all sounds like a Ponzi scheme. Like, you know what it sounds like? This is what, and again, Brian Callahan I don't think is in this because Brian Callahan is a football guy and he's a straight shooter even though he's young and probably embraces analytics like he said he did and all of that stuff. But what it sounds like to me is that Nashville baseball group, right? About once every 6 months, they sit down with somebody in the media and they talk about how Nashville would be perfect for a baseball team. And then somehow, some way, there's a story that comes out about how Dave Stewart is working on bringing a baseball team to Nashville. And every time one of those stories come out, we always ask the same question. So who's going to own the team? We don't know. So where's the stadium going to be? We don't know. Who's going to pay for all of that? We don't know that yet. But we got uniforms. I mean, if you've seen our uniforms, that's what, listening to the hierarchy of the Titans, that's what that sounds like. We've got a vision. We can't tell you what it is. Our vision is to be at the forefront, to be the groundbreaking, to be the... Okay, that's great. You know, I went to the Genius School where they taught us how to cure cancer with AI. And this guy I worked with, this brilliant guy, I mean, this guy was Albert Einstein, basically. And I said, wow, you know, I can take his theory of relativity and I can use that in the NFL. And with that, I gave Aaron Brewer $1.7 million extra to be a terrible center this year. Congratulations. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. I heard another analytics thing that I want to get to. And again, I will have an open mind when the analytic people come on, but we'll continue along. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Analytics, I think that it's a term that's a broad stroke term, but there's a lot of details that go into it, a lot of different ways it fits. At the end of the day, you're using hard, concrete data to help inform decision making, and that's great. The more smart people, the more information that you're given, the better decisions you can make. And so that's always going to be a part moving forward. I believe in that information. I believe in that data. And again, the game management part, the statistical analysis, all those things play a huge role in how we're going to build our organization, and they're important and it matters. So I believe in it.
I don't know how I feel about that. Brian Callahan talking about analytics. Some people just love the idea of analytics. Some people hate analytics. I'm trying to figure out what exactly it is that analytics does that's so special. But again, in the next hour, Matthew Collier, who wrote the Football is a Numbers Game Now book, he will be joining us. And then Eric Eager, who helps run Sumer Sports, which is an analytic company that football teams use, will join us. And talk to me like I'm an idiot. Explain what all this means to me. But Chad Brinker was on the official Titans podcast and then brought up this interesting hire the Titans may be making for Brian Callahan thanks to their development in analytics.
So I think the integration of all those departments along with Sarah Bailey and the analytics is a great thing. It's going to be a big thing for sports science, but also, Coach Callahan will hire a game manager as well, or a game management type coach that will work in conjunction with our analytics staff as well.
Wait a minute. What was that? A game management coach? So Brian Callahan's going to get a game management coach that will work with the analytics staff. I'm sorry. Isn't Brian Callahan the game management coach? Isn't that his job on the sidelines to sit there and say, well, we have a 53% chance to win the game if we go for this. We have a 50% chance if we kick the field goal. But the way I'm feeling in the rain against Lamar Jackson, who is not the best throwing quarterback in the NFL, let's kick the field goal. Is that not the head coach's job? Like, I know Dan Campbell's a doofus, but that is his job, right? Or is he going to have somebody over the headset that says, Coach, you need to go for it here. The statistics say that we have to go for it, and if we don't go for it right now, we're going to what are we doing? And then the game management coach is going to work with analytics. So the analytics department, so they can be up in the coaching box, right? And we're going to have Brian Callahan's dad, an old pawpaw who has been coaching for 50 years. We're going to have him sitting there, with his glasses on, I can't get this tablet to work in front of me to show me the plays. And we're going to have somebody up in the box who's sitting there saying, hey, the analytics say this, telling that to the game management coach. And the game management coach is then going to call down to the sideline to tell the coach what to do. Can't the analytics person just tell the coach what to do? And if the analytics person is telling the coach what to do, then why do we even have a coach? Let the computer run the team. What are we doing? Oh, my goodness, great. A game management coach. Boy, I tell you, if I'm right, this thing's a Ponzi scheme. Amy Adams Strunk is going to lose money on all these positions. Oh, my God. But, hey, it's her money, not mine. 615-737-1025. So a bunch of people have texted in on the AI Aaron Brewer model. And somebody said, is the AI model weighted for the fact that Aaron Brewer was Mike Vrabel's boy? Another one said, Aaron Brewer at center was a Mike Vrabel decision, buddy. Don't start using the old Mike Vrabel driven decisions Don't start using the old Mike Vrabel driven decisions to judge what a completely new team is going to do. It's not a completely new team, folks. These people were here last year. They're not new. And it's like somebody told me today. They said the Brewer thing, for instance. That might have been more of a Vrabel thing. And because it was more of a Vrabel thing, Rand was just wanting to go along to get along. I'm like, dude, you're the GM At some point, you have to say, no, we're not doing that, Mike. If you've got an AI model that can cure cancer, surely it would tell you that $4.3 million was too much money for Aaron Brewer. Surely, right? I mean, what's more difficult to do? Cure cancer or figure out that Aaron Brewer sucks? I think it's figuring out that Aaron Brewer sucks. So if the model is telling you that Aaron Brewer should not be paid $4.3 million, which he absolutely should not be paid, if that's the case, then why don't you say to the coach, dude, look what my genius AI model that cured cancer says? Is that too much to ask? So don't give me this Vrabel, because Vrabel didn't have final say of the roster last year, folks. Like, I know we don't know who did, but, I mean, come on now. One texter says, why does it seem like everything the Titans do is a pyramid scheme? Like they are trying to reinvent how things are done and say, trust us, this is definitely going to work, but you already know that it's not because there isn't even any baseline for the company because they just use a bunch of buzzwords. I agree. It feels like that Chad Brinker interview felt like a Ponzi scheme. It really did. Bunch of buzzwords and not a lot of substance. You know, when somebody is trying to articulate a vision to me, most of the time I kind of need to see something that's been done. That, okay, explain to me how this works and why you think this group can do that thing. And that's all I ask. That's all I ask. Let's see. One texter says, if the model is to look at players at risk of higher injuries, and they should be looking at the players signed since Brinker was brought on, and if the team has less injuries since hiring those players. I don't know what we're talking about there. And I have no idea. I feel like the Titans are really injured all the time. And I do think that some of that's being put on Vrabel, and I do think that that's fair. Like, I do think that, you know, again, I'm not somebody that's just, Vrabel's wrong about everything. I think Vrabel was wrong about a lot of things. I think Vrabel's inexperience as a coach was a problem. Even though nobody talks about that, I think it was a huge problem. I think Vrabel was too defensive. But I don't think I think the injuries, I do think that Vrabel was culpable in that regard. Texture says, sounds like the Titans are going down a slippery slope with AI. Next thing you'll know, there'll be robots playing football instead of humans. I might be fine with that. One texter says, be open to change. What the Titans are doing isn't working. Right. I am interested in change. The coach. They changed the coach. I wanted to change the whole thing. I wanted to start over from the beginning. But if this really is a Ponzi scheme, then we'll see that soon enough. Apparently somebody says most teams have a game management coach. Great. I'll let my coach coach the game. The next guy says game management coach. What's that? The head coach? Exactly. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Matthew Collier wrote the book Football is a Numbers Game. And I feel like that is incredibly apropos for what this show has been discussing and yelling about and screaming about for the last week. And he will join us next live from Radio Row at the Super Bowl. 615-737-1025. Let's talk about Twice Daily. That's right. I love Twice Daily. And Twice Daily has a chance to win a dream trip to Italy. Boy, I tell you, that would be great. Go right here from Las Vegas right to Italy on Twice Daily's dime. Boy, that would be something. And I'm telling you, it is easy because all you have to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program and purchase a made-to-order Italian sub. And you'll be entered in the Twice Daily sweepstakes to win an Italian trip of a lifetime. Mwah! I love it. Every sub purchase is a chance to win, and if you place an Italian sub mobile order, you get double entry. That's right. Visit Twice Daily today for the chance to win a dream trip to experience the breathtaking beauty and rich history of Italy. Go to twicedaily.com/sweepstakes for more info. Twice Daily, fresh all day. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, Radio Row at Super Bowl 58. That is right. And, of course, our coverage all week here is presented by the Nashville Sheriff. The Nashville Sheriff is hiring correctional officers. Call 615-862-8170 or email kirk.hopkins@nashvillesheriff.gov. Joined here now by Matthew Collar, who is the author of Football is a Numbers Game, The History of Pro Football Focus, and How a Data-Driven Approach Changed Football Forever. So as soon as you sat down, I said, look, I'm not anti-analytics. But I am anti how everybody keeps telling me how great analytics are, how I don't understand football anymore because analytics say this or analytics say that. And, I mean, now I got the Titans, who was assistant GM, now is president of football operations, but is still somehow under the executive vice president. I'm not exactly sure how that all works. But I've got him basically saying that, hey, the Titans are entering the new generation, the new frontier of football. When it comes to analytics and AI and every single thing they say, I'm like, okay, well, then why did your AI model tell you to sign this terrible center or left tackle, right? So why did all this? So I want you to treat me like I'm stupid, which I might be. I want you to treat me like I'm stupid and explain to me why it is that every single team apparently wants this, and explain, is this a Ponzi scheme? Like, what are we doing here?
Analytics are not a Ponzi scheme, for sure. But I would say that you're only as good as your interpretation of what the data tells you. And so there has long been data that people have used that isn't actually effective or is misinterpreted or not used the right way. And the other thing is that decision makers in football, they are taking a lot of data points, not just from the analytics people, but also scouting is data points as well. Like when you're in a room making a decision, you are getting the opinion of the analytics person, but also the offensive line coach. And if the offensive line coach really wants his center back because he feels like he identifies the mic better than another guy could, then a general manager might have to, or a decision maker might have to lean toward that, even if the guy's PFF grade isn't good, if he allows too many pressures, whatever else. So these decisions are very hard to pinpoint a lot of times. Was it an analytics decision? Was it to appease somebody in the front office? Was it an ownership decision? I don't know how much the owner of the Titans is jumping in on the center, but certain people end up in the room with different levels of power and influence. I also think that when you go to a press conference, no person has ever went to a press conference. Well, actually, Dave Gettleman did this once, but no one but Dave Gettleman has ever said, you know what, I hate analytics. They're stupid, because you want to sound like you're ahead of the game. You want to sound like you're modern and that you've got the sharpest and the smartest approach. But if you don't apply it and weigh it properly in your decisions, then it's not really worth a heck of a whole lot, right? And I think with, somebody like the Titans, what you want is analytics to be a part of every single conversation. So if you're going to draft a player, you want to know what the combine analytics are. What do they say in comparison to historical players? You want to know what their PFF data was, not just the grades, but like how many passes they broke up, or the things
like the route depth,
right? Yeah, stuff like that goes well beyond. And then how you combine that with everything else, then make the decision. And one thing that's hard too is, as we know from Dan Campbell, you can make a decision that makes sense on paper that doesn't work out, and then everyone goes, say, what happened? I thought your analytics were supposed to get all the decisions right, but a lot of times the draft can be very random, or free agent signings, a guy can get hurt and have it not work out, even if it made sense with analytics. So I think this is the major challenge that teams face when it's using and applying analytics.
So I do wonder this, though. How has it changed the NFL? I know that teams go for it now more on fourth downs. Yeah. But I'm sure that your book, which costs something like $20, is more in-depth than just, they run a bunch of historical models that says go for it here on fourth down, so the coach said go for it. So how has it changed the game more? I hear the Titans use the buzzwords about, we're trying to solve football problems with AI and analytics and these buzzwords. But how has it actually, how have teams actually adapted?
Yeah. And
give me some, real examples here, too.
This is one of the reasons I wanted to write the book, was because I wanted to know this question. Because I've been using, in my own coverage of the Minnesota Vikings, which is my full-time job, I've been using PFF's data for years to just enhance my coverage, to be able to ask better questions to the coaches and understand the players' jobs better and so forth, and be predictive in my opinions. But I wanted to know, how does the NFL use this? Does it use it like I use it, or do they have some secret sexy usage? And there's two different levels of this. There's the coaching, and then there's the front office and how they apply the analytics. So from a coaching perspective, think about if you're a coach who is struggling in the red zone, and you want to understand, why have we struggled in the red zone? Well, their PFF system is tied to the video. And so what they could do is quickly pull up all of the data and the numbers of the red zone and take a look at every play that they had there and pull up the film. And so you're saying, all right, well, we only complete this number of passes in the red zone when we're running whatever type of route concept. It's not working. So why is it not working? Let's go look at the film. Or when you're game planning against the other team, what types of coverage do they run? Do they run cover 2, cover 4, and what percentage? What are the chances when we line up in the red zone that we're going to face this in every NFL building, using this data to game plan, where it's kind of like the chess game has been enhanced by computers, which, chess has too. But that's the game within the game behind the scenes that's happening. And what we can see is the efficiency of running the football has gotten smarter. Teams just don't run on 1st and 2nd and try to throw 3rd and long anymore. They instead
not the Titans, but yes.
Yes, okay. No, that's a wrong place to make that example.
Sure.
But maybe in the future, that will not be the way you approach it. But if you look at the efficiency of run games, they've actually really increased over the last 5 years. So analytics is sort of painted as being anti-run, but it's really run correctly. Run not on 2nd and 13 or something, right? Or don't run 1st and 2nd down and get in 3rd and long. 4th downs is a great example of this, but I think all decision-making, whether it's the going for 2 with down 14
I have a specific decision I want to ask you. Matthew Coller's with us again, the author of Football is a Numbers Game. Again, the team that probably represents the new wave, the new era of football is San Francisco, right?
Sure, yeah.
That seems like an analytics-driven team that, whatever. They used what was basically equal to a first-round draft choice in order to trade for a running back.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do not believe in paying running backs or drafting running backs or whatever it may be, but they did with this particular running back.
Right.
So how would their analytic numbers say it's worth all of the investment, all the years of players that they gave up that they could have drafted, and they are good at drafting in the 3rd and 4th round. How would that be justified by their numbers to do that for Christian McCaffrey?
See, this is a great example of how every situation is different. Every 4th down is different. Every player decision is different. And how much you weigh the broad analytics might not apply to a slim situation. So, for example, broadly, you would not want to trade a first-round pick for a running back. That seems insane because of everything that's been studied, not just like analytics, but just like we can think of a bunch of examples. How about a guy I covered, Delvin Cook, where everyone was like, what are the Vikings doing cutting him? Well, he was kind of washed the year before, and then, you know what I mean? Like, these running backs get old quickly. Again, Derrick Henry doesn't apply to rules, but there you go. Like, there are always different situations. And so with San Francisco, what they knew was Christian McCaffrey is different. This is not just your average run-of-the-mill solid star running back. This is a guy who is like our modern Marshall Faulk. He is so effective in other parts of the game, in the passing game, and can create yards over expectation. If you ever watch Christian McCaffrey, your brain thinks he's tackled, and then he isn't. And that has value that adds up. And the other thing is, too, if you're talking about a first-round pick, everything is within windows, right? So, like the Vikings and the Titans, they are not in Super Bowl windows, and neither one of us know how either team's going to get there, by the way. San Francisco, though, they have a stacked top-to-bottom roster, superstars all over the place. When you watch the intros, it's like All-Pro, All-Pro, Pro Bowler, All-Pro. If you give up a first-round draft pick to get a current star, when you have your roster already completely full and you could win the Super Bowl, and that's your final piece, then it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, but I don't need analytics to tell me that,
exactly.
do I?
That's what I'm saying is that, like
we talk about that in hockey all the time.
But,
are they going for the cup?
Right,
Go
right.
for it, right?
Right, yes. It's not.
But I don't need analytics to tell me that. I know that. I know the 49ers are good. I know it.
Exactly. But 99 times out of 100, this is not the right move. This one time it is. But if you were the team that, for example, gave Dalvin Cook a huge contract extension and then he averages 4.2 yards a carry, then you have wasted a lot of your money because you didn't understand the age curve of a running back, right? Or even just the value of a running back over replacement. Or, like, look, Derrick Henry had a good season, but what was it worth? It wasn't enough, right?
Sure.
Like, if they had traded Derrick Henry, then you're getting assets back from maybe a Super Bowl window team. That would be more of an analytics-y type move, is to try to take advantage of somebody who is in a winning window to get an asset for Derrick Henry, because as great as he was, he couldn't drive your offense to success.
Last one for you, Matthew Collar's with us. And again, football is a numbers game. His book, you can pick it up. Dan Campbell in the NFC Championship game. So I thought the first decision to kick the field goal before half was smart. I thought that the first going for it was stupid. I thought the second going for it was stupid. And I thought running the football with 3 timeouts under the 2-minute warning was stupid. So in that instance, analytics says, or at least something on the analytics bot on Twitter, I don't know, says that it was the wrong call to kick before halftime.
Yeah.
It was the right call to go for it, and it was the right call to go for it. I don't know about the running the football. I don't think Dan Campbell, and I do know the Lions are an analytics team, but I do not think Dan Campbell is sitting there basing these decisions off of the nerds upstairs. I think he's just, we're going to go for it. I swear to you. Because if not, he would have gone for it before the half instead of kicking the field goal. So why is the analytics community embracing Dan Campbell when it's, again, I don't think it's analytics he's using.
I wouldn't be surprised if it is, because I do know that they have invested in their analytics department. But I also think it's probably a combination of him.
So their analytics people said run the ball into the end zone.
No. The analytics would never say run the ball and waste that timeout.
Okay.
Absolutely not. That was a horrendous decision. As far as going for it,
that was just stupid. That's just not.
That was just stupid. Yes. The thing about these decisions is that whether if you're using the fourth down bot or Seth Walder on ESPN, is that a lot of them are very close to a coin flip. So it actually would be kind of Dan Campbell's feeling if you're, radioing up to the person, and a lot of teams actually have an analytics person with a headset on up in the booth. So if you're saying
the Titans are hiring a game management coach, is that what that is?
A lot of teams have them. Yeah. Sometimes it's an analytics person. Sometimes it's somebody who's
played Madden and knows how to call timeout.
I don't think we're that far yet into the NFL's advancement, but Dan Campbell would probably at least have a feeling for. The analytics probably lean toward go. Now, they lean toward go in the tiniest way, by the way, in both of those decisions. But I think it was more that he had done it all year. And when you do look at the analytics, he was one of the most valuable decision-making coaches. And you go back to, I know, right? Which is weird because it's Dan Campbell. But you go back to, 2017 and the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. They did it a lot in part because they were underdogs with a backup quarterback and they needed an edge. So I think Campbell probably felt the same way. He was probably like, look, this is San Francisco. We need to put them away right now with getting a first down. And if Josh Reynolds catches the ball, then maybe they do, right? But instead he didn't, and then a guy had a ball bounce off his face. And this is the challenge of studying analytics and how often it worked or not. Because out of 100 times of making that decision, it might only be 1 out of 100 difference by the model, which to me is not enough to definitively say, oh, it was clearly an analytics decision. I think it was much more of a Dan Campbell has done it all year, and it worked.
Yes, it's his identity.
So, right, exactly.
But
so
it's not analytics.
Yeah.
That's how so the analytic community needs to get off his back, or,
I know
front.
what you mean. I know what you wanted to say. Yeah.
Yes, because he's not one of you, even though apparently he does things that you guys like more. By the way, are you an analytics guy, or is your book more like I'm studying why football is so into analytics?
Yeah, I mean, my trade is a beat reporter. So, but I've used PFF data a lot in my reporting. And so it was much more of a fascination of mine to dive into what is happening here in this analytics revolution, and PFF is at the center of it. But I am not a data scientist. I could not build you a model. Like, I have no idea.
Was it hard to get teams
to
talk to you about, how they do things, since everything is so proprietary and they don't want people to know that we're doing this because then everybody else will do something?
Yes and no. Like, some teams were clearly like, we don't really want to talk too much about it. But no, a lot of people were actually very open about it. Coaches were very open about it. I talked to a legendary offensive line coach that explained to me exactly how he used PFF. And what I discovered, I also talked to a GM as well about how the grades work and how a GM would use the grades. Obviously, they're not just going to have no scouts, but one thing is they like to do is compare the grades to what their scouts are saying and what their coaches are grading their players to see if there's any difference there. And okay, if there is, then we need to ask why. It's just an extra layer of data for him to use to understand. So what I've really come across is that there is a wide range of different ways that analytics are used in the game. And we're probably like where baseball was maybe 15 years ago, where people are kind of fumbling around the dark still. There's some teams that are really getting it. Baltimore's a team that's really getting it. And then there are other teams that are saying, oh, man, we need to do something about this analytics. And maybe your Titans are in that area.
Well, so, okay, and I know I said last one, and I do need to wrap it up, but I do wonder this. Okay, so you use the Ravens as a great analytics team. They signed Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney has sucked for the last 10 years. They signed Clowney, and he has his best season.
Yeah.
Is that analytics, or is that just they have good coaches that are coaching him how to play football better?
Well, one thing is that his under-the-radar stats like quarterback pressures and pass rush win rate were very good.
Right,
so
but he was on the Titans, and he did nothing.
Right. Yeah, so I think that there may have been some analytics involved with that, but also contextualizing everything is a hard thing to do. So every player affects every other player. If you're a wide receiver who plays with Tom Brady, you're going to look better than if you're a wide receiver who plays with Malik Willis, right? So you have to understand that with him playing on a defensive line that's pretty stacked, that runs a lot of confusing stuff, that might be able to ISO him one-on-one, as opposed to saying, you're our pass rush. No, you're a complementary piece. And that is why it is so difficult to just solve football and why one thing's going to happen or another. Which is why I like it.
Again, the book is called Football is a Numbers Game. It's got a 4.7 out of 5 rating, 4.7 stars.
Who gave it a 4?
I don't know. Somebody's not. It's like an Uber rating. Matthew, great stuff, man. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Stillman and Company, we are at Radio Row at the Super Bowl. I do want to say this. Apparently, 40 West is shut down back in Nashville. 40 West is shut down at mile marker 204. And apparently, traffic on the west side of town is awful. From what Chase sent me there. Stillman and Company, we roll along from Radio Row at the Super Bowl, 102.5, 106. Stillman and Company, we are live at Radio Row at Super Bowl 58. And again, we just had Matthew Caller on. His book is Football is a Numbers Game and how these teams are using analytics and pro football focused data and everything else. And then Eric Eager's about to join us. He is with Sumer Sports, which is, it's like him and Thomas Dimitrov, the old Falcons general manager, who gave Rand Carthon his first job in the NFL and personnel. They started a company, an analytics company. And what they do is they sell their data, or I'm not exactly sure exactly what it is, to be honest. They sell it to NFL teams. They partner with NFL teams. It's proprietary information, or I don't know. So here's the question I'm going to have. We own a football team. We own the Titans. Let's just say that right now. And I'm going to have him sit here. He's not even here. He doesn't even know I'm going to ask him this. He has to explain to me why we should why we should buy this. And then I'm going to leave it up to you guys to decide if we should spend however much money it costs, let's say $10 million. You guys decide after listening to him pitch his analytics, and you decide if you would want to buy it. If you would want to buy it, invest in it, and put your football team behind it. And Caller and I were talking off the air. You know, again, he covers the Vikings. And we were talking off the air about how, like, the general manager for the Vikings was the analytics guy with Rand in San Francisco. And I said, so how's that working out? And he's like, nah, not very well. And I'm like, well, then was it a great idea to go in on all analytics? So one texter says, look at Andrew Weidender, who's with the Bucs. He's been an in-game management coach for the last 10 years. And the Buccaneers have only had one good coach over the last however long it's been, and that was when Tom Brady took the team over from Bruce Arians. And I guess their game management coach didn't know to watch the ball going deep to Cooper Kupp there in the playoffs. One texter says, analytics is a movement like it's political. You'll have to accept it or you'll be debunked all the time. So again, you sit where you want to sit, whatever it may be. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to ask. I'm saying, hey, your sportsmodel.com guru, should I buy it? Should I, if I own this football team, should I take my team and say, hey, we're going to be behind your analytics data? Because, again, Chad Brinker told the official Titans podcast that he, went to business school and that some guy there used AI to help detect cancer, and that he decided to take that to figure out the market inefficiencies of the NFL and how they could save a couple $1 million. And then they gave Aaron Brewer $4.3 million. So I'm not sure that it really adds up. Also, one texter said Aaron Brewer makes $700,000. That's not true. He makes $4.3 million. We all know it. It was a second-round tender, and he signed it. Texter says, in 10 years, computers will be calling the games and drafting players the way things are going. Who knows? Texter says, watch Brian Callahan and Will Levis make magic happen together, and then the credit will go to a bunch of recent college grads who are playing around on ChatGPT. That's funny. Okay, Eric Eager joins us from Sumer Sports. Again, and hold on, let me pull up this Sumer Sports so that I know exactly what this is before he comes on. Because, again, I'm going to say to him, I'm like, hey, man, you tell me why, if I owned an NFL team, I should spend all the money that it takes. So they are a collection of executives, engineers, data scientists, and visionaries. What the hell's that? From the industry of sport, finance, tech, academia, law, and defense. They have a passion for solving difficult problems and a proven record for success. Together, their website says, they are bringing in the best in-class quantitative analysts to the most popular sport in America. Oh, this is amazing. So he is the VP of Research and Development, and he will join us next. Ian, I'm excited about this.
This will be fun.
I am excited about this. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company live out at Radio Row at Super Bowl 58, and we are joined by Eric Eager of Sumer Sports, the VP of Research and Development. Now, here's what we said we were going to do. Because Sumer Sports is a collection of executives, engineers, data scientists, and visionaries. Are you a visionary?
I mean, some say.
Okay. Visionaries from the industry of sport, finance, tech, academia, law, and defense. We have a passion for solving difficult problems and a proven record of success. Together, we are bringing best-in-class quantitative analysis to the most popular sport in America. So here's what I said, because I saw you over there chatting with Collar about, and I'm sure that he was like, oh, yeah, he was just grilling me on analytics. So here's what I've decided. I told the audience this. We own the Tennessee Titans. We don't, but in this case, we do. Yeah. And we want to be more analytic focused because that's a great buzzword. So I'm coming to you and I'm telling you, why should we partner with Sumer Sports? Why should we buy what you guys are selling? How will it make us a better football team? And the key word that I just used there was how. And then I decided that after the segment's over, we're going to let the fans decide if we should do it or not. So give me the how.
The how is leveraging the existing brilliance in the building more efficiently. So one of our business models. So like I used to work for Pro Football Focus. Matthew's one of my best friends.
Sure.
There's a chapter in the book about me in there. So but PFF has a different business model. They grade the players. They try to tell you how good Derrick Henry is. They try to tell you how good Kevin Byard was for the Titans. And that always kind of rubbed people the wrong way. And there's a lot of good data at PFF, but it's a different business model. And a lot of times those grades weren't adapted. The Titans have scouts that go out and grade these players. The Titans have fundamental worldviews and visions about what their team wants to be. I was at PFF. We're the whole running backs don't matter people. I don't believe that, but like that's kind of how we were.
Sure.
So the Titans wanted to be a run the football, play defense team, and we look at the results. They were a 1 seed in 2021 with, the most injuries and missed games of any team in NFL history. They made the conference championship game in 2019 with Ryan Tannehill. What we want to do is not tell you necessarily what your vision for your team should be. We don't necessarily want to tell you how good your running back is. What we want to do is say, you used to have to spend 40 hours a week not only grading the players, not only building your vision for your team, but then building it all up, right? Not only engineering what that ended up meaning. And Sumer Sports, we're going to take that and actually
When you say building it all up, what do you mean? Like collecting it all together and then
So literally going to a whiteboard and saying, okay, Derrick Henry's a 7 and he's 27 years old. He went, he runs a 4.6 now. He has this injury history. So boom, 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 boom. He's worth 5 years, $60 million with this guarantee. Now, That's worked okay in the NFL a long time, but we've seen like these teams are in like cap hell, New Orleans, teams that they.
I think the cap's fake, but go.
Well, yeah, New Orleans is terrible after all these years, right? Like they're in dire
yeah, but Atlanta doesn't have cap problems and they suck too.
Well, but that's not a great. I mean, New Orleans. Just because a team can be terrible in many ways, right? And so, but
the reason to me New Orleans is bad is because Drew Brees retired.
Well, but they kept pushing things into the future because Breeze kept making that much money, and they kept sort of like piling it in, and they didn't have a plan for how to offboard Breeze. And like to my point is, if you and that takes a lot of work, right? You have to think into the future. You have to understand the age curves of the players that are on your team. You have to understand the probability that Michael Thomas is going to get injured. You have to understand the likelihood that Ryan Ramczyk he's going to go from an 8 to a 7 to a 6, which he is now. And all of those things, like there's not enough time in the world for you to do that by hand. And so what we want to do at Sumer is to take out a lot of those things that can be automated so that the brilliant people in the NFL that have earned those stripes can apply their faculties. When I was in academia, I did mathematical biology. Like I want the biologist to go out and collect the field data and I'm not going to tell them how, like what an aphid is or what the fish look like, how they swim and everything. But sure. I want to be able to leverage their brilliance and for them to be more efficient and for them to get to the answer faster. And so that's kind of what our promise is at Sumer, is not to necessarily tell you what the answer is. It's to more allow you to give us the information and get to the answer faster.
So, to that point, can't an experienced general manager that's been in the league long enough just kind of look at it himself and say, hey, I see that Michael Thomas is injured all the time. We can't rely on it, so let's not invest in it.
But what does that mean, though? Because I think that there are always – you need to know what the price is, though. Because there's one thing to say Nakobe Dean has a shoulder injury and I'm not going to draft him. There's another thing to say Nakobe Dean is a first-round talent. His shoulder injury makes him a third-round talent.
So, okay, let's use his shoulder injury, right? So the shoulder injury, he has it. The doctors look at him at the combine, whatever. How do you quantify that?
Well, you look at the history of players who have had similar tags, right? It's the same thing that IBM Watson was doing with oncology and things like that, where you have these tags and it says, okay, this shoulder, this, and whether it be a number that they give to it or whether it be, we have this thing called text analytics, which is called latent semantic analysis, where you say if these words are in the document, it's this severe, whereas that severe. And again, it's all a gamble. We're all, we're in Vegas right now. It's nothing certain, but it's to say, if a player who without injuries is worth this much, with that injury he's worth that much, I'm willing to take him at that price. Now, if the league completely writes him off and he's there in the third round, he may be of value. If the whole league is like, that doesn't matter, we're going to take him in the first round, you just avoided a bad gamble. And again, I agree with you. I think that the guys like Thomas Dimitroff can sift through and make a lot of those decisions really well. But even Thomas, will tell you that at the end of you were making multifaceted, multidimensional decisions about what to do with Dante Fowler, what to do with Matt Ryan's contract, whether or not they should have drafted Justin Fields at 4 in the year after he was gone, or Pitts, those kind of things. And again, like a human can make like kind of first order decisions, but then it's like, how does it affect the downstream and stuff there? And it's just, in my opinion, really hard. And teams have shown this. I mean, most of these teams are in really tough positions from a roster standpoint, and that's why the same team is in the Super Bowl 4 out of every 5 years, because they got the moat in a great quarterback, and they've hit on a few draft picks, and all these other teams like the Chargers, who have a great quarterback, are stuck with their third coach in the last 5 years. And that's, to me, I think that we can help them kind of get to the answer faster and sort of even the playing field.
Well, can I just argue, though, that like Kansas City's quarterback, the level of his greatness is better than the greatness of the Chargers quarterback? And that's why Kansas City's in the Super Bowl and the Chargers are not?
Sure, but you have to quantify that, though. And you have to look and say, okay, well, so Patrick Mahomes, let's say he's a $75 million player. He makes, $50 million against the cap by the time you're at next year. So, okay, you're working with a $25 million surplus. Justin Fields is maybe a $60 million player making $55, so you got a $5 million. So you got to make up $20 million somewhere else on your roster. And, so then you're looking and saying, okay, in the history of the NFL, where do you find $20 million surpluses? Well, you don't find them at linebacker. You don't find them at fullback or running back, safety. You got to find them at tackle. Okay, well, where do you find $20 million surplus at tackle? You find them in the draft. And so and again, some of those
Or in Kansas City's case, right, you wait for Donovan Smith to get cut, and then there's
you trade Tyreek Hill, which I know is like the Tyreek Hill trade was very much an analytical one for the Chiefs, which was he's worth a certain amount, but these draft picks are worth another amount. And Patrick Mahomes with, and they've tested this theory this year almost to the breaking point, but Patrick Mahomes with Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Mecole Hardman is good enough to overcome. And then that defense, once you feed it 6 starters in last year's draft, that combination ends up being good enough to win the Super Bowl, where historically Tyreek Hill, with a defense that you're hoping and praying doesn't fail in the playoffs, is not quite good enough, against the Bengals in 21.
But wasn't the difference between their winning and losing versus the Bengals in 21 where they had Hill and 22 where they didn't have Hill? In both games, it was razor thin.
It is razor thin.
I don't think it was like the quality of the defense is what got them over the hump last year against the Bengals that didn't get them over the hump the year before.
I disagree, though, because in the Bengals game, L'Jarius Sneed, who I think many people would believe now is a top 10 defensive player.
Yeah, he's really good.
He got a concussion in the 5th play of the game, and they played against Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, with 3 rookie corners in that game and held the Bengals to 20 points. They're giving up 40 in that game 2 years prior, right? And again, you're right. I mean, look, a lot of analytics is quantifying luck and how much you can actually control. But I think in football, the margins are razor thin, and that's why you've seen teams, Green Bay with Rodgers, even Peyton Manning a ton of years. I know he's won Super Bowls, but like most of these teams, Patrick Mahomes is the first quarterback in NFL history to win a Super Bowl, making more than 14% of the cap. This year, he's the first quarterback to participate in a Super Bowl with the biggest cap hit in the NFL. those margins are razor thin, and to even have an opportunity to overcome those, I think requires more than kind of historical approaches to the game.
Eric Eager's with us, VP of Research and Development at Sumer Sports. And again, so here's my other theory on this too. I think analytics works much better in baseball than it does in football, simply because the nature of baseball is everybody's almost unimpeded to a certain extent in baseball, right? Like the pitcher, his spin rate on his ball, there's nobody that's stopping him from spinning the ball the certain way that he does. And so they take that information, and I think that matters, right? Like, this guy can't hit this pitch at this spot. Okay, then that analytics tell us throw him that pitch. I don't think it's as simple in football.
Well, I'll concede every day of the week that baseball is different. The other part is you have the sample size, right? You look at the 2017 Eagles where they went for 20 fourth downs that other teams wouldn't, and they made like 70% of them. They win the Super Bowl. The 2019 Ravens went for, they were 16 of 18 on fourth down in the regular season. They missed 2 against your Titans.
Yeah.
They don't even make the conference championship.
And those two, the next play after those were huge plays. I mean, those two cost them that game.
And in baseball, that's just 1 out of 62 games, or in football, it's 1 out of 20 games. And so I agree. But the fact is okay, just because in baseball the variance is shorter, you're still cranking out 1 or 2% edges. And wouldn't you, in a world where in a world where the difference between you winning a Super Bowl or not, I mean, I think my colleague, my boss, Thomas Dimitroff, when you think about whether would he wanted to have 1 or 2 percentage points back in the 28-3 game against the New England, probably would have, right? I think the margins being razor thin means that analytics, you want to give yourself a fighting chance with those, and just because there is a lot of noise,
although the team he played was not a very analytically driven team.
I reject that. I think New England, for one, they had Ernie Adams has been on that team for decades. I mean, Bill Belichick has done padding, and he Ernie Adams has been there forever, but he was the first one to go for fourth downs in his own area. Bill Belichick was kind of the OG analytics person, and I think there's no better sort of proof of that, the fact that he crapped on it, because he knew that if other people were trying to copy him and doing it, it would erode his edge a little bit.
Dude, I worked with Floyd Reese for 5 years, and he was right there in that same crew with Bill and those guys, and went to New England and worked with. There's no way that those guys were embracing analytics.
They had the same.
They might have accidentally. I think that's what you really.
Well, they had the same grading structure for 20 years. No NFL team has had that, right? And that information is invaluable. That's stuff that I would pay extreme amounts of money for. And now, I mean, he's probably not on the sideline computing win probabilities on fourth downs. I mean, he's actually quite bad at that, or he has been bad at that. But as far as having a documented process for making decisions, I think Bill Belichick historically has been one of the best people there. Now, has that evolved and has that gotten more sophisticated? Yeah. And as that has gotten more evolved and more sophisticated, Bill Belichick has gotten worse as far as his results are concerned. So some of that's Brady, of course, but I think that squeezing out a percentage or two here and there is what you owe your fan base. And I think as some teams are doing that more often, you have to do that to counterbalance it, or you're going to fall behind.
I feel smarter because of this conversation. Eric, I appreciate you
thanks for having
so
me.
much. Again, Sumer Sports, Sumersports.com. You can download their free big game guide with statistics and winning edges at Sumersports.com. Great stuff. Appreciate you as always.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Stillman and Company, we roll along from the Super Bowl, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
So I got around a lot of really, really smart people. And one of the classmates I had a PhD in neuroscience from the University of Minnesota. He had an advanced analytics degree from Oxford, and he helped design the AI technology for one of the top medical device companies in the country, where the AI was used to help the doctors identify cancer in patients. And I was just fascinated by this. And so I took what was a football problem and we put it in the context of AI. And one of the problems that we have in football is we spend a lot of money on players that don't pan out for injury. A lot of times they get injured and you end up paying for them injury settlements, or you end up cutting them once they get healthy. I was like, if we can reduce our pool there, if we can reduce our risk within that pool of players, I mean, that would be a game changer. If you can save an owner $1 million, $2 million off of one decision, I mean, that's a game changer. So I got with these guys, and we started to attack the problem. And to make a long story short, we were able to develop some models that seemed promising.
There you go. That was Chad Brinker on on the official Titans podcast earlier this week, or this weekend, I should say. And he's talking about, man, we got all these models that can save us a couple $1 million, and think about what that can do. And I went to the Smart Business School, and we saw it with. And then they gave Aaron Brewer $4.3 million. So I asked the text line, after you listened to Eric Eager of Sumer Sports, would you invest the money in analytics, their analytic program, their system for how they're doing all of this to help run your football team? Ian, would you?
I'd probably consider it, yeah.
I wouldn't. I'm out. I think when I listen to the things that they're saying analytics help with, I'm like, that's what GMs are supposed to do. Like, that's what the GM's job is. When he's like, well, okay, Nakobe Dean got hurt, so how does that affect his value? And I'm like, okay, so how do you guys analyze a shoulder injury? Well, we go back and we look at all of those same injuries and kind of what the expected time for all. I'm like, that's what your doctor's jobs are. Like, you have a medical staff. That is their job. Like, hey, Todd Torricelli, the trainer, when you look at this MRI, what do you see? And I am banking on your past history of being able to tell me what you see from this MRI to tell me whether or not this guy's any good. And it's like, well, the analytics have taught us that spending cap dollars, a blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, but there's no difference. Again, the difference between Cincinnati and Kansas City, the past two, not this past year, but the past 2 years before that, it had nothing to do with any analytic number that put Kansas City above Cincinnati or Cincinnati above Kansas City. It's just, it's fugazi to me. It's extra bull crap, and they're trying to sell it off. And I'm not saying that he tried to do that, because he didn't try to come over here and say that this will change your program for forever, but they're trying to sell it off like they're smarter than everybody else. And I just don't. I'm sorry. If that were the case, then the most analytical teams would be champions, and Andy Reid doesn't strike me as the most analytical guy. Jeff from Hendersonville says no thanks. Chris in Nashville says, I could see how this could be helpful. How expensive is it? I mean, you're talking about whole departments. So millions of dollars. I mean, oh my goodness. I'm so out of this. Like, to me, what this is it's cover your ass. That's what it is. It is, why did you draft that guy? He sucks. And, well, the numbers told us that his athletic score at the combine gave him a better chance to be a successful player than Jimmy, who's an all-pro. So don't blame me for screwing up that draft choice. Blame the numbers. That's what I think this is. And I've yet to hear, I mean, it's almost like you're paying for the data as much as anything else. You're paying for the history of the money and all that kind of stuff. I just don't. I don't know. Goodness. Texter says, as someone who knows doctors and how that works in the NFL, Todd Torricelli definitely does not read MRIs, as that is outside of his scope of practice. Whatever, they've got doctors. To ask the doctor how it works, that's the point of having a doctor. One texter says, I think analytics are a good tool that when used correctly are effective, but they shouldn't be everything. That's what everybody always says. Oh, yeah, no, they should help, but they shouldn't be everything. Well, then don't sit down and tell me how it's going to cure cancer the way he told me it's supposed to cure cancer. Texter says, I'm really excited to invest all my money into analytics just to lose to Mahomes in the playoffs. That's so true. Was drafting Mahomes an analytical decision? Or did Andy see that moldable clay and say, I can do it because I know what I can do with quarterbacks, and he's got it? And that's what I think that was. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Not a good day for analytics around here. Christopher Mad Dog Russo will join us up next, the Radio Hall of Famer. First Take, Mad Dog Unleashed. He will join us next right here at Radio Row at the Super Bowl at Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios at Radio Row at Super Bowl 58. I've gotten so much better at my Roman numerals. I remember last year not being sure exactly how to do that. But again, we are broadcasting live, presented by the Nashville Sheriff, where, again, the Nashville Sheriff is hiring correctional officers. Call 615-862-8170 or email kirk.hopkins@nashvillesheriff.gov. Again, live here at Radio Row. And as we get set for the Super Bowl matchup, and we are joined now by a legend, the Hall of Famer, Christopher Mad Dog Russo, sits down with us. Doggy, good to see you here in Nashville.
How are you, pal? What's going on?
Good.
Things good?
Good.
What do you have?
First of all, I want to say this. I want to thank you for having me on your channel.
Jared's with us here, and he's here on a lot. He's done a hell of a job. We're well aware of it. Steve Torrey loves you, and the fellas love you, and we're happy to do this spot because that's one of the reasons I'm doing it, because of you. We're big fans, and thank God you've been part of the program.
So I
like that.
I got you something.
Oh, you do? What do
I
you have for me?
Just because you put me on your channel.
Oh, you got me.
I got you a bottle of Davidson Reserve. That is
straight bourbon whiskey,
right from downtown Nashville.
Well, how about that?
I talked to one of the guys that distributes. I said, all right, I didn't have Mad Dog on my show. I'm like, what do I need to? He said, get him that. So I got you a bottle of Davidson Reserve straight Tennessee whiskey.
Good
there
boy,
you go.
Jared. I'll drink that.
There you go.
But I'll pass that along. How you doing? Things good in Nashville?
They're great. I got a Nashville question for you.
When are we going to get this stadium done, by the way?
So the football or baseball?
Well, football first.
Okay, so that's going to be done in 2027, and then we're going to have one of these Super Bowls down there. And I do wonder, indoor stadium, nice weather, big city-ish, people are moving to it a lot.
Oh, they do. People love moving to Nashville.
I do wonder, like, getting that stadium, getting one of these Super Bowls, what will that do for our city?
Well, I mean, listen, it's going to bring in a lot of attention. It's going to give you tons of money during that week. These Super Bowls are and obviously if you build a stadium, the NFL will throw you a Super Bowl. Nashville is a hot town. People will enjoy that. That will add a lot. You get a lot of international travel. That will add an awful lot if you can put a Super Bowl in that town. Not all cities will, Jacksonville, I'm not sure what they got out of it, so I don't think it's all the cities, but Jacksonville, Nashville, the perfect scenario. That's a good deal. Have they dug ground yet?
This month.
What's the story about the baseball situation?
Okay.
What's going on with that?
So this is what I want to know from you, which is how much
You'll
do
get
they
a team.
talk?
You'll get a team.
Because in Nashville, I know the mayor, I know the Metro Council, after this Titan Stadium, they won't give $1 to baseball. They won't give $1 to anything.
Interesting. So they're putting all the money in your new stadium.
Yes.
Splitting it.
And we got hockey, and we made a land deal for soccer. So we gave them the land, they built the stadium and all of that. I believe that if we were to buy a stadium, we'd get baseball immediately. But I do wonder
I
if
think that's
they
a
don't,
problem.
Would they put somebody here?
I thought getting a baseball stadium in Nashville was an easy one. You're telling me right now that the city government and the state government is not going to give any owner a nickel for a new stadium?
I don't think so. We had the mayor on when he was running for mayor, and I asked him that, and he basically said, yeah, we're not interested in spending any money.
Well,
for
take
baseball.
the baseball team. Do they have the place to put the stadium?
I think downtown is where Major League Baseball
Wants
would want
to
to be. This is what I believe, is that there are counties outside of the county that Nashville's in, Davidson County, that's still the Nashville area. Kind of like how the Braves play in Cobb County now.
But that's not the same. You need the stadium in downtown Nashville. There's no place to put it?
I just don't think, unless somebody wanted to buy the land and then buy the stadium and pay what is it going to be, $2 billion for an expansion?
Easy. Yep.
Okay, so now we're already at about $10 billion right now, or we're at $5 billion or somewhere around that.
For the football stadium.
Yeah, well, I'm just talking about for baseball, between the expansion fee, buying the land, building the stadium, all of that.
Wow, so right now it's been a foregone conclusion that baseball was eventually going to expand to Nashville. You're telling me right now you're not so sure that's going to happen.
I think that if baseball was hell-bent on getting to Nashville the way the NFL was to L.A., we would do it in a heartbeat. We'd support it. It'd be incredible. But I don't think we're going to pay for it.
And you also don't have the place to put it in downtown. we're referring to, about 15 miles out of town?
Something like that.
Yeah, that doesn't work for baseball. Why would baseball want – I don't blame you.
Sure.
But why would baseball want to be 15 miles? That's a great downtown area. It's a beautiful little city. Why would baseball want to be 15 miles away on some turnpike?
Do you think –
in the middle of Tennessee.
What would it do for us? Like if we were to say, you know what,
well, the good thing about baseball is there's two things about baseball which you like if you build the right stadium. The stadium is smaller, it's more intimate, and it's unique. Plus, I know the football stadium's across the river, you can walk, but the baseball stadium in downtown, you take advantage of being in downtown. Remember, look at San Diego. It's a small park. It's in downtown. You like the baseball stadium. Not all of them are like that, but Minnesota's downtown, San Diego's downtown, San Francisco's kind of downtown. I'm trying to think. Baltimore is downtown. You want the stadium, 35,000 seats, small, and you want that thing in downtown. If you're telling me right now, Jared, that you don't think that Nashville is going to do that for a prospective owner thing, I'm not too sure if it's worthwhile. And then if you're telling me that even if baseball said, okay, fine, we'll build the facility, where can you give it to me downtown? And you say, fine, we don't have anything downtown. We'll give you land 25 miles away, but we have nothing downtown. Why would baseball be attracted to that? I wouldn't be if I was a commissioner to put a ball club 25 miles out of town. I wouldn't be attracted to that.
Do you think if we gave them the land that they would want to build their own stadium downtown?
I think that would be – I think they would – they would consider that.
Okay.
If you gave them the land and it's in downtown Nashville where they can capitalize on the atmosphere, the environment, and build one of these picturesque 35,000-seat ballparks that's got all the ambiance that you want, and you said, here's the land, you build it, I'm assuming that baseball would consider that. I don't know if baseball wants to be 30 miles out of town. That would be my take. I don't know anything. That would be my take. But you gave me some information that I'll take back to the baseball people and see what they say.
There you go. Mad Dog Russo's with us. Now I got another. Derrick Henry has got to deal with the Titans. It's up. He may be a free agent this year. He may come back. They got a new coach. They're kind of in transition. Do you think
Vrabel got a raw deal? He shouldn't have been fired.
Well, we'll get to that in a second, but I do want this. Is Derrick Henry a Hall of Famer, or does he have to do more?
No, he's a Hall of Famer. If you ask me right this second, is he a Hall of Fame running back? He's a Hall of Fame running back. I love Henry. I know he didn't, he did not perform and did not play in a Super Bowl. He's a great all-time back. He's done it long enough. Yes, I think Marshawn Lynch is a Hall of Famer too. Now, he may not make it, but I do think that Henry's a Hall of Fame back. He could, in my eyes, no, I don't vote, obviously, but in my eyes, if he never played another down, I'd put him in the Hall of Fame.
Okay, your thoughts on Vrabel?
I was shocked. I mean, and they bring in Brian, Callahan from the Bengals, who didn't even call his plays there with Zach Taylor. I thought that was a horrific decision by the ownership of Nashville. I made no sense. Now, I know Vrabel didn't get another job, so that makes them look good that he wasn't gobbled up by somebody else.
Sure.
But Vrabel's a hell of a coach. Does a good job. He doesn't really have that well-known quarterback yet. We don't know about Levis. He looks like he might be good, but you can't. He had the one great game against Miami. You can't swear on that right now. We were all surprised. No, we weren't shocked because we think we maybe saw this coming. They did let A.J. Brown go a couple years ago. Maybe Vrabel wasn't on that page to do that. But, yes, most football people were surprised that Vrabel was let go. And most football people think, not that I talked to him, but this is just me listening, most people think that Vrabel got a raw deal. That was a surprising. What was the view in town about that firing?
So, Vrabel had his warts, and I think he does. I don't think he's great at building a coaching staff, and I think he got a little defensive too much when he started to do some losing, and that probably didn't bode well for him. He didn't play well with the new GM they brought in.
Fair enough.
I think it was 50-50, though. I think a lot of people thought, this is a great coach, and they got rid of him. I think he's a good coach. I don't think he's a great coach. I was shocked, though, with as big as his name is, as much as people think he's a great coach in the game, that a team like Dallas didn't say, hey, are we a Mike Vrabel away? Philly didn't say that. Atlanta didn't want him after it broke down with Belichick. I wonder if there's a reputation thing that's going around.
But I don't know if Atlanta wanted to take another Tennessee coach to be their head coach. They took Arthur Smith, our coordinator. I don't know if they wanted to go back in that direction again. So that explains that. I would have fired McCarthy and brought Belichick in. Jones wants to be the Cowboys, doesn't want Belichick to be the Cowboys. That explains that. I think in Philadelphia they wanted to give him a third year after these 2 terrible years, fixed the coordinators. So I'm not sure if, in fact, he's been here 3 years, and he made the playoffs all 3 years and did get to a Super Bowl. Seattle, I don't know if Seattle wanted to go out there and bring in they wanted to come up with something different. The younger coach. Vrabel's going to coach again, though. He's going to coach again. Here's what I would say about Vrabel. Does anybody think that Mike Vrabel underachieved in Tennessee? When is the year that Tennessee should have been great and they weren't? He hasn't had a quarterback. Tannehill's not the answer. Josh Dobbs 2 years ago. They let A.J. Brown walk. Tell me the year that Tennessee should have been a Super Bowl contender and wasn't because of the coaching. You can't give me that year. What year was it? He has Ryan Tannehill, the quarterback. He's not a championship quarterback. So you're going to get rid of a guy who didn't have the most important player at the right position, and he did well with making the playoffs as many times. Is it his fault that Tannehill threw 9 million interceptions against Cincinnati that the year they lost the playoff game when they had the best record?
So I feel like you're not going to like this. But after Arthur Smith left, he hired a bad coordinator, and it didn't work. And that led to the Tannehill interceptions. And then he got another shot at it, brought the guy back, and it was even worse. And then he hired another coordinator, and he was a bad coordinator. And it's like, I do think the offense could have been better if he knew how to hire an offensive coordinator, but I think he's just throwing darts at the wall when trying to find a coordinator,
right,
and that's a big part of coaching.
All right, so the offensive coordinator, the guy that he hired in Tennessee, is most people's problems with Vrabel.
It's a big problem. The one that he kept after the bad year with Tannehill, and they brought him back, and it was even worse after that. A lot of people.
What's his name? Who they keep? What was his name after Smith left?
It was Todd Downing, who had a year with the Raiders, and they fired him when they brought in Gruden.
And then they brought him back, and that was a mess. All right, so people don't like the person. Is it his fault that A.J. Brown left?
Now, he was the one in the room that said he didn't want to trade A.J. Brown.
How'd that work out?
Exactly.
He's one of the best receivers in football, and they got rid of A.J. Brown. They brought the draft pick in for Arkansas, who never plays. Who never plays. He's done nothing in 2 years. Now, he's been hurt, but he's done nothing in 2 years. So he wants to keep A.J. Brown, who's one of the top 3-4 receivers in the sport. Chase, Jefferson, the kid from Detroit, that's how good A.J. Brown is. How did he do when he got hurt against Philadelphia, against Tampa, and late in the year? So he wanted to keep A.J. Brown. They didn't want to pay him. They let him go to Philadelphia, and the guy they draft to replace him stinks. That's Vrabel's fault?
No, but everything outside of that. Like the offensive line was a mess, and they do pin
Who
back
drafted this offensive lineman last year and never placed? Was that Vrabel's court? This guard who has done nothing.
No. Don't get me started on that because I used to work with Floyd Reese, the old Titans general manager, one of the smartest guys I ever knew. And he told me if you take a guard in the top 10, he ought to go right to the Pro Bowl every year and on his way to the Hall of Fame.
John Hanna.
That's not even – and like Quentin Nelson with the Colts, he's done that. He's in the Pro Bowl every year.
Who's the guy that drafted this guard?
So it's Vrabel and the current GM were collaborating. They did not tell anybody who had final say last year, and they collaborated on drafting the guard out of Northwestern.
So Coughlin's got to take some hits for that. That's a horrendous pick.
Everybody
horrendous.
In Nashville defends it except for me, and I get yelled at every time I do it.
You cannot defend that pick. You cannot. The kid barely played. He's not. You cannot defend that pick. That's a terrible pick. You don't take an offensive guard with it. What number pick was it in the draft?
11.
You don't take an offensive guard with the 11th pick in the draft. That's a horrendous pick. You can't do it. And again, I'm going back to A.J. Brown. Did they replace sufficiently? Here's a team that doesn't have any offense. Did they replace A.J. Brown?
No.
Okay. Did they try to replace him with the kid out of Arkansas?
They did.
Who was a first-round pick, was he not?
Yes.
Has he done well?
No.
Okay. Whose responsibility for that?
The general manager that got fired.
That's it. Oh, he got fired, the GM?
Yeah, they fired the GM that did that one.
Robinson?
Yep. And I thought, hey, you know what? He won 61% of his games as general manager. They were in first place. They fired him in the middle of the season. Bill Walsh won 61% of his games running the 49ers. And they still fired him at 61%. And because he traded A.J. Brown, I don't think he's going to get another job, which is crazy to me. But you think this time next year will Vrabel have a job?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I think Belichick will coach again, too. I think both.
What about Pete Carroll?
I'm not sure about him. 71, 72 years of age. I know he wanted the Charger job. It sounds like they brought Harbaugh in. Nobody's going to complain about that. I think Belichick he's close to Shula. I think he'll coach again. I think Vrabel will coach again. I'd be surprised about Pete. That's what I would say right now. I would be surprised by Pete. But a lot of these owners, and the owner makes the call, a lot of these owners want these young coaches, who they want to build with. The kid goes to Seattle. You guys get Callahan. The one job that I thought was ridiculous, how does Washington hire Dan Quinn? They had a defensive coordinator in Rivera. That didn't work. Quinn's defense stunk in Dallas when push came to shove, and he blew a 28-9 fourth-quarter lead in the Super Bowl to Belichick. How does Dan Quinn get the Washington job?
Well, because it broke down with Ben Johnson.
Oh, that's the reason. But come up with somebody else.
I would agree.
You can't come up with Dan Quinn. Come up with somebody else. That I didn't understand.
If you're going to do that, why not Vrabel?
That too. Well, because they got a young GM in there, the kid from San Francisco, who's 33 years of age. But you're right. They hired an older guy as it was in Quinn. Why not hire Vrabel? I don't have the answer for you on that. That I didn't understand. And I think that's a good job. They got the second pick in the draft. That's a good job.
Last one for you here. Where do you think this is going? Radio, talk radio. I feel like with sports radio, it is always going to be popular because you can't do a podcast and get callers and live reaction.
There's no involvement with podcasts. And it's not regular. It's a couple days a week. Nobody does a podcast every day, I don't think. It's a couple days a week. I do think, the sports talk has got a barroom feel to it where people can sort of congregate and talk about sports. You got to be a little worried about terrestrial radio, or you got to be a little worried about that. There's not as many guys like you and me doing this with the calls and everything else. But I've heard about. Here's what I would say: I've heard about the demise of sports talk and AM radio and this kind of format for about 30 years. Mm-hmm. I've heard about the demise since maybe the 20 years. We're still going strong. We're still doing it. There's a million stations here from all over the country doing these shows. So I think it's a little overrated with the demise of sports talk. I think it's a little overrated. And I agree with you about the podcast. There's no interaction with the fan base with podcasts, and it's also not immediate. You tape it, you put it up. It's not every day. Anybody can do a podcast. You can do a podcast. You can plan it. You can do it, get the guests on. You're only on a couple of days a week. Go on every day. Plan a show. Be there every day at 2 or 3 o'clock. Go 3-4 hours. Day after day, week after week, month after month. That's radio. A guy doing a podcast, setting up 2 interviews a week, and we'll drop it on a Thursday, 40 minutes. I can do that. I can get Joe Buck on. I can get Troy Aikman on. I can get a coach on. Hey, can you give me – I can't do Mondays at 3, Chris. All right, how about if I tape it at 8:20 on a Thursday? Yeah, I can do that. So, it's so much easier. Go on radio every day and tell me if you can do that. Then I'll tell you if you can do a podcast. Here's what I would say. I can do a podcast in my sleep. I'm not sure if a podcast guy can do a daily talk show in his sleep.
So I agree with that. You said something last year on a podcast that I have told everybody, and I've almost taken it kind of as my own, if that's okay, which is in order to be good at this, I think you have to be knowledgeable, you have to have a personality, and you have to know how to run a radio program.
Well,
and you said that,
I agree
and I heard that, and I'm like, yes, that's it, because there are so many people that don't do this that think they can do this.
100%.
And
running a radio program is like a jigsaw puzzle. You got to put all the little pieces together to make it a good show. Again, it's a fair point. Let me see a podcaster who thinks he's got a big deal. Go on radio, a station, Monday through Friday, 46, 48 weeks a year. And let me see you do it in the middle of May when there's no football. Let me see you do it on an August day when nobody cares about training camp. Let me see you do it around the NCAA tournament. You got to break down all these little teams that nobody's ever heard of. Let me see you do it on April 25th, or a week after the NFL draft.
Sure.
Let me see that. That is a talk show host, and we don't have as many of those as we should. The medium has lost that guy who can do that kind of show.
He's the best in the business. He's a Hall of Famer.
Good
Christopher
job,
Mad Dog Russo.
Keep up the good work. Good
Chris, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for stopping by. Mad Dog Russo on our program, 615-737-1025. And we will get to those. We will get to those phones as, again, So you got to have the phones in this. 615-737-1025. We roll along right here. Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, a lot of reaction to our test in our text line. Our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. A lot of you guys are mad at Mad Dog. A lot of you guys are mad at Mad Dog for his defense of Vrabel. And I tried to explain to him about the offensive coordinator situation, but again, that's how everybody is going to feel, which is that Vrabel got a raw deal. And when he brings up the A.J. Brown thing, it is hard not to at least say, okay, and that Vrabel did get, he got defended by that for a year. But a bunch of people texting in saying, there's the national media again on Vrabel. And that is reality. What I still don't understand is if that is what people believe around the country about Mike Vrabel, why not get another job? And I still can't get over that. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Justin says, Jared, Mad Dog was great. He is right about radio at least. There are enough people out there that daily try to tune in and listen and interact, and what you guys do is not an easy gig. Let me say this about being a radio guy. this is why I don't, I don't, like when people get on there and say, well, I think the doctors are all crooks. I'm like, dude, do you know how hard it is to be a doctor? And so that's how I feel about my job, which is like I feel like, it's really hard to do this every single day. And he's right, by the way, when he said that, hey, you come over here on April 26th after the draft and try to host a show every day. That's a lot harder than, say, hosting on a Monday after the Titans get blown out. And I always tell people that. The big days are the easy day. Next Monday is an easy day on the radio because we will have all watched the Super Bowl and we will all, have an opinion about, oh my God, why did this guy kick the field goal? Why didn't he go for it? Oh my God, why did this guy drop the pass? Oh, Brock Purdy, he's not good. It's all that's easy. The question is, after the Predator season is over, after the NFL draft is over, and I'm not saying it's an abyss because I think we do a great job and we have a good show and we enjoy it, but that is the hard time. That is when it's like, you got to get creative. But we did an hour today to start the show on what I heard on the Chad Brinker podcast. I mean, that's not easy work now. Texters into the text line, again, are just going after Mad Dog on the Vrabel takes. I love it. Tyler says, see what he thinks about the fact that you led the pitchfork mob on Vrabel. I said, look, he messed up the offensive coordinator hire. I said it was 50-50. I thought he needed to go. Now, again, my bigger thing is I just think the Titans needed to totally blow it up one way or another. But that was just on me. Boy, Dexter says, national media is so in the bag for Vrabel, he must have the best PR of any head coach ever. Guys, get ready for more of that this week. Because there is going to be more. Like, there are going to be more people on here that tell us that Vrabel is the greatest coach in the history of the Tennessee Titans. There are going to be more people that come on here that tell us that the Titans made a horrible mistake, that don't know about Todd Downing. That's what, right there when I talked about the coaching staff. He was like, well, they didn't like it. They don't know. The national media does not know about the coaching staff. You know what my favorite part of that interview was, Ian?
What's that?
His take on Skoronski.
He was, you can't take a guard there.
Cannot take a guard there. He said, cannot take a guard with that pick. And I loved it. I love that. I loved it. Oh, my goodness. Every time now somebody's like, oh, Peter, he's so great. Jared, did you not see it? I'm going to say, you guys heard what Dog said. You guys heard what Dog. That's going to be the new right tackle story. What Dog said. 615-737-1025. Speaking of that Chad Brinker podcast. When somebody really loves something, it's really easy to tell. Like, it's really easy to tell when somebody just absolutely loves something, believes in it one way or another. It's also kind of easy to tell when they go out of their way over and over and over again to kind of say the same things over and over and over again. And there's one thing that keeps coming out from the Titans. That Diana reported it after they fired Vrabel, or she said it after they fired Vrabel. And it was in this Chad Brinker press conference, in this Chad Brinker podcast with Mike Keith and the radio crew, that almost feels like it's a commercial at this point. I'll get to what that is next. Window Nation, that's right, I love Window Nation. If you've had enough of your windows keeping your home chilly, then you need to fight the February cold with Window Nation. Go online to windownation.com. And I got to tell you something. I mean, we're at the time of year where it's actually nice outside, and then a week later it's going to be frigid, and you know how this is. You guys remember 2021 when it snowed in the middle of February? I mean, that's Nashville weather. I mean, Nashville's great, but that is Nashville weather. You know that. And so if you've got that draft coming into your home, I mean, you're going to be skyrocketing your heating. It's going to skyrocket your heating bills. You're not going to like that. You're going to have certain spots in your house that are frigid. You're going to have certain spots in your house that are a furnace. You don't want that. So if you want to replace those windows, it's easier than you think because you can save big with 50% off all window styles. Plus, 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. With proven quality and service, it's no wonder why thousands have trusted Window Nation. Again, replace your windows and save big. 50% off all window styles. 0 down and 0 interest with no payments for 24 months. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com to schedule your free in-home estimate.
I'm extremely grateful and appreciative. Miss Amy is she is sweet. She's kind. She's fair and tough, and she loves her Tennessee Titans. There's no doubt about it. She loves this organization. She loves these fans, and she wants to get this thing right. And I'm just grateful that she put me in this position to try to help get the organization moving in the right direction and push us into the future.
There you go. Chad Brinker on the Titans podcast. Oh, Amy loves the Titans. I promise you, Titan fans, Amy loves the Titans, and I'm so thankful to Amy for putting me in this position. You know, and I like Amy. I do. I mean, every interaction I've ever had with Amy has been fabulous. I mean, I will say, and I've told this story 100 times. I told it to Jim Wyatt today. What she showed Floyd when he got sick and they put him in that Ring of Honor and made sure that he knew before he died. That will always be something for me. But the only time you ever hear me talk about Amy like that is if I were to work for Amy and she were to pay me millions of dollars to work for her. And then I would say that, which is exactly what Chad Brinker's saying right there. So I do want to point this out. You know, again, he went on the podcast, and I wasn't going to spend the entire time marking every time Chad just gushed over Ran, because, quite frankly, that would have taken way too much time. And so I'm listening to this podcast, and the questions can be, you know, so tell me about, you know, how this team is getting off the ground and how we're, you know, I'll tell you, we're really working. It starts with Ran, and Ran's so great. Ran's the best. So here's just a small collection of times that Chad went out of his way in this podcast to praise Ran Carthon.
Ran is a tremendous person, you know, as far as an evaluator and the relationships he has around the league. And we really wanted to allow him to flourish in that role. Ran brings in a lot of good people, and that's something that this organization can be proud of first and foremost. I do know we have the right GM. You know, Ran Carthon's going to do some great things. He and Brian Callahan just kind of getting this team together. There's a lot of excitement around it. You know, hope is a powerful thing. We're hopeful that the fan base sees that and is excited about what we're doing.
Hope is a powerful thing. But again, it was the whole 50-minute podcast was that, of just him talking about something and then talking about, you know, oh, Ran and this and Ran. Oh, can you give me the kind of players they're looking for, he and Ran? You know, I'll tell you, this Ran, he's so smart. Listen for the kind of players that Chad Brinker says he's looking for. I'm sorry, I threw that on Ian there. So, again, do you have that cut, Ian?
I know Ran and I, we've had a lot of conversations just around philosophically how to build a football team, and we're just so aligned, he and I. And Ran talks about, he has this acronym, FIT, fast, instinctive, and tough football players, and I love that. I was like, man, I love that. That's kind of an identity of the team that you want to build. Because this league, I mean, you got to be big and fast. I mean, size and speed matters.
I mean, it's like, wow. He wants those fast players. He wants those. Let me say this, okay? I don't give a rat's ass if Ran Carthon is Gandhi. If they don't get players in here so that this team can start winning, and I don't care if they build an AI model out of a Harvard Business School and that leads them to the next Mahomes. I don't care if Rand's sitting there flipping the channels in his office one day watching TV, comes across the SEC network, some random replay of a Missouri versus Florida game, sees some outside linebacker in the game, says, I think I like this player, takes him, and he becomes Lawrence Taylor. I don't care how you do it. Get the good players in. I am so tired of this, Jared. You have to just assume that the Titans are going to get these great players in. You have to just trust the process. I don't have to do anything. But again, it feels so forced. It feels like they're trying to win a PR battle, and in this job where they're sitting right now, it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. You don't need to get on there and tell us how great the general manager is. If the general manager drafts good players, everybody will like them. And I understand you're going to say, well, what do you expect him to say, Jared? And what I would expect him to say is talk about the things that you guys are doing that help you feel comfortable that you're going to get this thing right next season. That's what I'm talking about. But the idea of like, oh, no, Ran only brings in the best people and we only go out and get the – I mean, again, if it was a personality contest, that'd be one thing. It's not. But stop trying to sell me on a commercial. The more that they do that, the more that we can ask a question about, what's the plan for this team to improve this year? Well, I'll tell you, we had a meeting with Rand, and God, Rand, he's just the best. I mean, how we got so lucky to be blessed with a general manager as good as Rand Carthon. The more they do that, the more it sounds like they're insecure about it. The more it sounds like they feel like they have to say positive things about Rand because there are a lot of people out there that are skeptical. And I think there are a lot of people that are skeptical because he's given us reason to be skeptical. And so I mean, it's too much for me. It's too much. Just all the sunshine pumping all the time. Oh, my goodness gracious. It's like, don't worry about that stuff. Worry about football. But see, that's why these guys, I've noticed this, they will not do a press conference that they're not required to do. I mean, think about this. The only reason Rand Carthon did that disastrous press conference after they fired Mike Vrabel, which, again, was not 100% his fault that it was such a disaster. It was a little bit his fault, but it wasn't 100% his fault that it was a disaster. Part of it was the owner made a decision, and because the NFL requires somebody in power to speak, they put him out there. And he probably shouldn't have been out there. But other than that, no press conference when they hired Brian Callahan. No press conference. Mike Vrabel took questions last year when Rand Carthon was hired, but no questions for Rand Carthon at the Brian Callahan press conference. No trip to the Senior Bowl, so no press conference for Rand Carthon. So when's he going to talk to the media? I know he did a sit-down like Chad Brinker did on the Titans official podcast. I know. Friendly questions from friendly people that work for you. I know. I got it. But that's why they do that, because they won't get challenged on that when they say something ridiculous like Chad Brinker said about the AI model that cured cancer from business school that he brought to the NFL to save him a couple of $1 million, to which I say, then why did you pay Aaron Brewer $1.7 million more than you needed to? And there's not an answer there. And if the answer is they wanted to placate Vrabel, then guess what? You guys don't have much of a backbone, because I thought that was stupid, and you guys know me. I don't have a hard time standing up to Vrabel. And I'm a lowly talk radio host. 615-737-1025. A lot of you want to weigh in on this at 615-737-1025. We'll hit some of those. Plus, speaking of sunshine pumping, Diana. Apparently, Diana Rossini's got a Vrabel take that we got to get to. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app, and they are celebrating the Super Bowl. That's right. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football stacks, and placing some super bets. In fact, somebody texted me in the group, said, what are we doing for the Super Bowl? I'm like, that's a good question. We're going to figure that out. But again, it is the Super Bowl. It is a great time. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which player will score a touchdown and how many points will be scored and so much more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/JGM, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. First $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Is it his fault that A.J. Brown left?
Now, he was the one in the room that said he didn't want to trade A.J. Brown.
How'd that work out?
Exactly.
He's one of the best receivers in football, and they got rid of A.J. Brown. They brought the draft pick in for Arkansas, who never plays. Who never plays. He's done nothing in 2 years. Now, he's been hurt, but he's done nothing in 2 years. So he wants to keep A.J. Brown, who's one of the top 3-4 receivers in the sport. Chase, Jefferson, I mean, the kid from Detroit, that's how good A.J. Brown is. How did he do when he got hurt against Philadelphia, against Tampa, and late in the year? So he wanted to keep A.J. Brown. They didn't want to pay him. They let him go to Philadelphia, and the guy they draft to replace him stinks. That's Vrabel's fault.
There you go. That was Doggy on with our show earlier today, Mad Dog Russo on the program. And I got to get to this. Because, again, the national media thinks Vrabel's a great coach. We were lucky to have him and stupid to fire him. I know. And I have not heard this. The latest from Diana Rossini. Now, Ian, Diana and I are staying at the same hotel.
Oh, maybe we'll run into her. You can ask her.
I did yesterday.
You ran into her? Okay.
So I was leaving the hotel to, the media hotel is the Luxor, which I got to tell you is a freaking dump. But the media hotel is the Luxor, which is connected to Mandalay Bay, which is we're in the convention center here at Mandalay Bay. And I walked out of the Luxor to go to Mandalay Bay to set up Radio Row last night, and Diana was coming in, but I didn't recognize her at first because it was not like the Diana that we see on TV. And so I was like, wait a minute, I think that was Diana. And then it was, but she had already gone. Like, I mean, Diana and I, have had cordial conversations. And I would welcome her on the show. If she wanted to come on the show, we'd put her on the show. I had no problem with that. But apparently Diana went on the Athletics football podcast. I cannot believe this. And said in reference to Vrabel, quote, I don't think there was a fit for him. I don't think he sat in front of any owner who thought that his style was going to work for what they were looking for. I don't have a problem with that. That doesn't surprise me at all. Vrabel gets defensive. He's bad with the coaching staff. And again, this isn't new information. Nor do I think that this is defamation to say that Vrabel's a jerk. You all knew that. You loved that. That's like saying Belichick's a jerk. They loved it. And then it stopped working. But Diana says, I had a GM at the Senior Bowl. Well, this couldn't have been Rand. I had a GM at the Senior Bowl who mentioned to me Vrabel's physical build, that he's a very large human being and can be very intimidating to people in an organization that are going to be part of the decisions, and that is a factor. Do we need to start Rooney ruling for size? You need to interview one fat coach. You need to interview one tall coach. You need to interview one skinny coach. You need to interview. Do we need to start doing that? Because Mike Vrabel's too big? Let me say this, and I know a lot of people are making a big deal about that, and I do think it is funny, as far as kind of laughing about Diana saying that and whatnot. First of all, the idea that Vrabel is too big, and that's why, oh, no, this is not going to work, with Vrabel, that's ridiculous. But I do think there is something to the fact that Vrabel can be very intimidating and that it is his way or the highway. And it's just like Dog said when we talked about Washington, when he said Dan Quinn, and I'm like, okay, if Dan Quinn's such a bad hire, why not Vrabel? And he says, well, they got a 33-year-old general manager. I think Adam Peters is a little bit older than that, but they got a general manager. Adam Peters does not want his power being taken away from him. And that's why they were always going to hire somebody who was going to be less than him. And I think that's it. I don't think a GM who wants to run their team is going to bring Mike Vrabel in only to have Mike Vrabel kick him to the side. And that is what happened. Not to say that Vrabel kicked Robinson to the side, but the way that Vrabel tried to take over the team, that did happen around here. And so if a GM and an owner are talking, just like I think all the people in Atlanta told Arthur Blank, I think Arthur Blank had his heart set on Belichick, and that Belichick probably said he could play nice and that he could do things, that way. And then all of a sudden, with Belichick, it was like the other people in the room were like, no, we do not trust Bill Belichick. We do not want Bill Belichick doing any of this stuff. We don't trust it. We don't want it. And because they knew that Belichick's going to box everybody out. And that I do think is real. Okay, tomorrow at Radio Row, great show today. Tomorrow, Rich Gannon will join the program, and I am excited about that because, Ian, you do know who Rich Gannon's coach was when they went to the Super Bowl with the Raiders.
Callahan Sr.
Yes, Bill Callahan was the coach of Rich Gannon, and we will bring up the Levis sisters and mom thing with Rich Gannon. Solomon Wilcots will be on the show tomorrow. Thomas Dimitrov will be on the show tomorrow. We're going to have way more out here at Radio Row. Great show today. Thanks to Nashville Sheriff for having us out here. The Commodore Hour, big one with Kentucky tomorrow for Vandy basketball. That's next, Stillman and Company. And they got an SEC win over Missouri. I actually watched the game on Saturday. That's next, Stillman and Company. We'll see you from Radio Row tomorrow, too.